Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. Thank you very much for participating in today's discovery. My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic, and in a minute I'll introduce Dr. Berger. First, I thought we would pray. We're going to talk about emotional sobriety just to make sure that you know where we're at and what we're doing. But let's pray this serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. That's really the primary prayer of emotional sobriety, isn't it? Learning how to navigate life as it emerges, learning from our mistakes. Well, thank you very much again for joining us today. We're going to be here for a while. Dr. Berger and I are committed to be here for the next 4 hours, and we're going to take a look at resentments and disturbance. So it's broader than just resentment, it's disturbance. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Dr. Berger and I first met when he was the clinical director at San Pedro Hospital here in the South Bay area. My wife had entered into the hospital program for her recovery. The name that was mentioned in connection with the labyrinth, Sister Johanna Leahy, yes, very Irish, was the one who had introduced Mary to the possibility that she had a problem with alcohol and that there was a treatment program. And so the retreat center has been incredibly instrumental in my life and my family's life, as has Dr. Berger, because he was the head of the whole therapy practice and recovery for the newly sober or want to be sober people and their families, the golden age of recovery. They included the family. And I met Dr. Berger, and because of his both education, but his personal background, he's an ex-Marine, and quite frankly, he's not an ex-Marine, he's a Marine. And he brings it, he brings it. And I love to storm the hill with him. So Alan, go ahead, please.
Well, I'm writing the Marine Corps to see if we can make you an honorary Marine.
We got the same haircut.
Yeah, well, look at you would be the guy to storm the hill with. I know that. That would be, I know you'd be at my side as you have been now for a long time. Our relationship has really flourished in so many wonderful ways. I'm very grateful for it and for you and for all that you brought to my life. And, you know I brought some great stuff to your life as well. And, that's the makings of a great friendship, is that we've really nourished each other and witnessed each other grow in some amazing ways. So that's been our journey, right? And what we discovered when we did that workshop in Malibu is that there's another dimension to it that we never realized that we would have. And that is, becoming colleagues and co-facilitators and, co-educators and co-journeymen on this journey and this adventure of emotional sobriety, right? And I couldn't have picked a better person to do it with, her, to tell you the truth. I just, though the thing that I think that is great about what we do is that the respect we have for each other's, what each other brings to the scene and our differences is so great, and they're so complementary. Yeah. And that's the thing that I love. You make my work better, and I make your work better, and can't ask for. I get goosebumps. I mean,
well, that's the definition of synergy, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
The whole is bigger than the sum of its parts.
And that's what we have. And so I'm so glad that you're here today. This is a very special workshop today. What we talk about oftentimes are the theoretical aspects of emotional sobriety, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, all of those things. And that's wonderful. We need to do that. I think it's important to have a cognitive map or a schema of what this is all about, right? Because it is part of changing our consciousness. One of the things I've talked about recently is the transition our consciousness goes through as we take this journey. And there are some really significant, change points in terms of that consciousness. One of the greatest ones is to go from, blaming others for what's going on, or even blaming ourselves, to a more of an experience. I call it, at the first stage of this transition, we develop a healthy suspiciousness of ourselves. We start to go, wait a minute, maybe I've got something to do with this. I mean, but not in a blaming way, in a curious way. See, is that one of the things that I've seen that has happened, and it's been stimulated in my work with Herb and my personal work, is curiosity has been stoked in my life. I am more curious today than I've ever been. And that's what I feel in you, Herb. I mean, our curiosity has grown so much. Yeah. And we get together and we talk, oh my God, what about this? And how about that? And do you see how that might be related to this? And those discussions that we have both within the context of these workshops and outside have just been, I could not have written my new book without you. Let me put it that way. It's been that meaningful to my life. And I know the feeling's mutual, that your work is richer as a result of what we do. So that's been a wonderful thing. And I'm so glad we can share it with you today. And as I said, today we go from the theoretical to the practical. We want to get down in the trenches, and we want to talk about what happens as we live this life that we're living, and the bumps in the road that we are all going to hit, that everybody hits, that are inevitable as part of our journey. And the important thing is and you hear it, this is the essence of emotional sobriety. It's not what happens to us, it's what we do with what happens to us that's the key to our life. And today we're going to talk about what to do with these things, to be able to digest things that are painful, disturbing, that have caused maybe sleepless nights, and how to grow ourselves from them. The key word today is post-traumatic growth. We've gone away from post-traumatic stress. It's post-traumatic growth is we're focusing on, and this is all that positive psychology that's going on right now in my profession and in psychology, is we're moving away from what's wrong with people to focusing on what's right about them. And one of the things that's right about us is an unbelievable ability to experience unthinkable trauma and pain and suffering, and to come out of it a better person. That's turning lead into gold, isn't it? That's an alchemy that, you and I have talked about before. Yeah. So that's what today is about. This is part one. We're going to go through, and I love this process that Herb has developed in his 12-step workshops on how to unpack some of these resentments and disturbances. This is part one. Part two is we'll go through my approach to doing it. So you're going to get, to different dimensions. We're really talking about the same stuff. You're going to see that the stuff Herb talks about will overlap with what I talk about, and some of the stuff will be unique. So this is going to be quite a journey. This is part one. Part two will happen in our next workshop, which is October 15th.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Berger. It reminded me of so many things. I don't want to get hijacked by the dynamic of the present moment. But the man who helped me in 1988 go through the steps when I was 4 years sober, he said to me after hearing an hour's worth of my background, you have to look at me. You have a lot of information, Herb. Wow, what a background, academic knowledge and your own personal self-development. You have so much knowledge, but you have very little experience. It's never been filtered through your heart to your feet. You don't have an experience of change. You have a lot of academic knowledge, but you have very little You have a lot of information, but you have very little transformation. I love and he used it there. It was a spontaneous thing, but wow, did it get my attention. Alan, I want you to talk a little bit about, because at that point, using the work that we're going to show you today, some of it, you've seen it with me, and we're not just going to teach it.
We're going to do it.
So Alan's comments are, we're going to do the work today. Hopefully you're going to have even a new experience, no matter how much you have done and what you know. Even if you've been exposed to Dr. Berger's work or my work or a combination of it before, it's a new day. It's a new day. And we're going to hopefully pull the curtain back, another layer of curtains. There's about 150 layers of curtain. So we're going to pull another curtain. But Alan, talk about Gestalt, because I know that's your particular specific training, and I think it's relevant to this conversation.
Well, I think it's best to put it in this framework. My recovery journey started in 71. As Herb said, I was in the Marine Corps from 69 to 72, Vietnam 70 to 71. And in 71, I entered into the first program that the Marine Corps developed to help those Vietnam vets that were coming back with problems with drug addiction. And that, I'm not going to go into that story. It's a long story, but the result of it was that I became a counselor at the center because they didn't have anybody. I was a few steps ahead of some of the other guys. And so they invited me to come on board, and it changed my life. I fell in love with helping people. It became a passion for me, and I decided I wanted to become a clinical psychologist. And so off on my journey in education in 87, that dream was realized. But all throughout my education, and I say this to a lot of people, I have a very, very good, solid education. My degree was from UC Davis. My undergraduate degree from Cal State University in Long Beach was a wonderful academic program there. I was well prepared to be in class with students from Harvard and some of the Ivy League school, and I was as well prepared as they were, if not in some areas better prepared. So I really feel very, very grateful for the background I had. But the most important training I had occurred outside of academia. And that occurred in my own personal therapy, on being on the other side of the couch, as well as meeting a fellow by the name of Dr. Walter Kempler, who was considered a pioneer in Gestalt therapy because he brought Gestalt therapy into the world of relationships. And just real briefly, Gestalt therapy was one of the therapies that developed out of the third force in psychology. The first two forces are psychoanalysis and behaviorism. And the third force, or the third wave in psychology, was all this human potential work, like Gestalt therapy, Carl Rogers' unconditional positive regard and his approach to therapy, all kinds of therapies. Primal Scream was at that time, and bioenergetics. And it was an incredibly exciting time to be in recovery and also to be in therapy with all this going on. Well, when I met Dr. Kempler, I was blown away, just like I was blown away when I met my sponsor, Tom. Walt seemed to be able to be present with people in the here and now in a way that was so powerful and created so much potential for change. And that's the essence of Gestalt therapy. It's focused on the here and now. It's focused on that this moment. In this moment, you will or will not learn to support yourself in what you're doing. And so the focus is on it becoming acutely aware. In fact, at one point in time, Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, was going to call it concentration therapy. Because if you're in therapy with a Gestalt therapist, you're paying attention to, you're becoming aware of what you're doing and how you're doing it. That's the important thing. The why takes a back seat to what and how. I'll say that again. The why takes a back seat to what and how. I found when the philosophy of the here and now and dealing with what's going on and all of the things that I was learning in Gestalt therapy fit so well with my experience in 12-step recovery. It was amazing. We talked about synergism earlier. The synergism I felt from both was unbelievable, was incredible. And so, you know, what the heart of Gestalt therapy is moving away from talking about things to doing things. And if you've ever heard Herb talk about recovery, he says, pay attention to your feet. If you want to know what your truth is, look at how you're functioning in your life. Look at what you are doing here and now, not what you think you're doing, what you are actually doing. And the truth is, it's hard for us, for a lot of different reasons, to be aware of what we are really doing. Oftentimes we think a lot worse of ourselves or a lot better of ourselves than we actually are. I mean, we're somewhere in the middle of those two things. But that was the fit, because recovery is about, what are you doing? And Gestalt therapy is about the same thing. It's a behavioral approach, but it's also whetting this awareness. And that's what I experienced in my recovery. I needed to be aware of my powerlessness, and my life was unmanageable if anything was going to change. And that's the same principle in Gestalt therapy, is we change through a paradoxical theory of change. As soon as you own what you're doing, now something new is possible. So that's just one example of the wonderful fit Gestalt therapy has with 12-step recovery. So I feel very, I mean, I'm grateful to know you and what our journey is. Dr. William Rader, who you met when you guys were at the treatment center, he was a brilliant clinician, and he helped me, you know, hone and develop my skills in that area. And Dr. Kempler, who I spent, you know, over 20 years with, you know, first as the administrative director of his institute, and then as one of the coach facilitators. I've learned so much from them. And, you know, what we do is try to pass on those things we're given, Herb, don't we?
Yeah. And I loved your term. You said post-traumatic growth, which is very compatible with the shift in the orientation of psychology back in the 90s, where they said, oh, we're not going to talk anymore about abnormal psychology. We're going to talk about normal psychology. Let's not take a look at, we understand a lot about sickness, but let's take a look about wellness. And that's what we're doing here today. When this man did this to me, and I signed up with him to have him take me through the steps, my story changed. No, it blew up. My story that I didn't know that I had a story, but at age 48, within a year of doing this work that I'm going to show you today, and it didn't stop there, of course, it just continued, but we'll give you the essence of it today. The story just changed. I really literally found out it was fake news. A term we use today. I hope it's not politically loaded for you, but it was fake news. It was a delusion. It was a story that I had made up that had some components of truth, but it was all that negative stuff. And I was turned. This is what we hope for you today. If you haven't had it, that you have it, or at least a little introduction to it. And if you have had it, some more of it. And that's the turning from a victim to the acknowledging, not in a condemning or judgmental way, but acknowledging that you're the perpetrator. I'm not the victim ever. Oh, we've been victimized. Oh, it's horrible, some of the stuff that people have, the betrayal that people have experienced, the hardship, that unnecessary hardship that people have experienced, the traumatic experience that people, the unfortunate and even criminal.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. It's all true. That story is true. Go ahead, Alan.
No, I was just going to say that the word we might want to replace, because people are, you hear the word perpetrator and you can't suddenly you hear this, But
I didn't like it when I said it.
well, it's a loaded word. I
Yes.
know what you mean by it, and
Yeah.
the meaning that you give to it takes it out of the moral, context that we often hear that word, right? It's such a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But the thing that personal psych or positive psychology talks about is personal agency.
All right.
So if you replace that word perpetrator in your
Yeah.
mind right now with personal agency, you see, the personal agency says that no matter what happens to you, you can still find a way to take that experience, assimilate it, and you hear this in meetings all the time, take what will grow you and leave the rest behind. That's what positive psychology focuses on, is increasing our personal agency.
Yeah.
And so that once my personal agency increases, I'm no longer a victim.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a victim. I know I have the ability, however slight it may be. And we're not saying that it's, at times, sometimes you have a huge ability to do this, but we always have a slight ability to influence the experience we're having.
That's the word I use, is influence. So we don't control anything.
No, we can influence.
You're right. The perpetrator word is really loaded, and personal agency for me is a little too fancy. But I like that I'm responsible. I'm responsible.
That's what personal agency is. It just says we have that ability, or even if just that concept. So that's the word now, or the what we're trying to get across. And this experience today is going to see you how to take more responsibility, which then empowers you. See, that's what Dr. Seligman hoped for, is as we increase somebody's personal agency, they become more empowered. As you take responsibility, you become more empowered in your life.
Right.
And that's why it's important not to fuse responsibility with blame. Correct. Nothing to do with blame. Right. Not a thing.
Right. And in fact, the word I use as part of the fourth column, and we'll talk more about that later on, is my role. My role, my responsibility. The whole point of this process is empowerment, as you indicated, that I am 100% responsible today, not for yesterday. I'm responsible today for my thoughts and for my attitude and for my feelings. And as you said, for my behavior. I'm 100% responsible because I have free will. Now, how free is it? Whoa, that depends on your consciousness. That depends on your healing. That depends on your emotional sobriety. Because in fact, if you don't have consciousness and healing and emotional sobriety, you're not free. You're bound in the chains of your story.
And this was one of those aha moments for me when I was confronted with, and Alan, you are 100% responsible for the level of consciousness that you are bringing to your life.
Yeah.
See, that's the other part of this, is that you're also responsible for that. Right. And that's why I say one of the things that happens as you begin this work is you develop a healthy suspiciousness. You can even call it a healthy paranoia.
And a healthy curiosity.
That's what grows out of the suspiciousness, is your curiosity that, wait a minute, we hear people say that I'm the common denominator here on all of these events. Yeah.
And I use the model of, just in this last year, more poignantly, I use the model of moving from darkness to light. And that's a infinite process for finite people. It never changes. That's why the curiosity is so important. Yeah. We could go on like this forever.
Oh, yes, we could.
All right. So let's go to, I'm going to guide you into a preparation for what it is we're going to do today. Just a short preparation. Here we go. So we're going to inventory obstacles to serenity. We started with the serenity prayer. What does that mean? For me, it's an acknowledgement that I do not control. Lose the word. 25 plus years ago, I had an insight that the word control is really, it's not accurate. I'm a word person, and control is just not accurate because we don't control anything. I mean, literally, we do not control anything outside ourselves or anything inside ourselves. And Dr. Berger and I just talked about it, influence. The serenity prayer is to figure out what I influence. And I use the word course correction. When I make a mistake anymore, it doesn't name me. It's just a mistake. Oh, my thinking or my feelings or certainly my behavior were askew. They weren't accurate. They weren't in connection with reality. I'm going to change it and experiment and practice with something else, a different thought, a different feeling, a different attitude, and certainly a different behavior, and see what that does. That accomplish what is it I want the outcome. What are these obstacles to my serenity, meaning my alignment with reality? If you've had any exposure to Alan and I, you know about the Einstein quote, but please hold it. Maybe it'll have a new impact on you today. The consciousness that created the problem cannot be the consciousness that solves the problem. Isn't it interesting? In our spontaneous conversation, we both focused on one word. If you were tracking us right now in the last 5 minutes, the central bullseye point of what we were talking about was consciousness. If you don't know better, you can't do better. If you don't know you have an option, you don't have it. Now, if you know you have an option, then you have choice as to whether to take it or not. If you know better, you have a choice of doing better. Now, it's free choice. You might not do better, even though you know better. The big book calls that unmanageability. I was introduced to an attitude. It's more than just a prayer, please. Prayer is merely that intimate conversation with God or with higher power or with the universe or whatever it is in terms of any type of whatever the word is, reality outside yourself that you hope exists. Prayer is that intimate conversation. Words are not important, but human beings need words. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, my unmanageability, my emotional sobriety, and you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my unmanageability, my emotional sobriety, and especially you. Notice it's not, God, please help me. No, we're asking for spiritual intervention. Not the strength to do it. We're asking for it to be done to us, not by us. My definition of a spiritual awakening. To be done to us, not by us. Please, I need help. Part the curtain so that I can see better, know better, and do better. So here's the questions for you. These are critical. They're probably synonyms for one another. Step 10 in the 12 and 12. Bill wrote the 12 and 12 as a commentary on the steps, but one of the more powerful chapters is this one on step 10. He says it's a spiritual axiom. Whenever I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. There's something amiss, not in a judgment, not in a negative way, but I'm the source of my problems. Now, I couldn't understand that until I did a thorough fourth step, the major part of which we're going to reveal today in terms of the resentment inventory, column 3 and column 4. And be careful here with words when you go to meetings, especially. A lot of people know that the big book doesn't use the word column 3 or column 4. It has a third column on page 65. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And it has the final paragraph on page 67, which I call the fourth column, but there's no vocabulary, column 3, column 4. It's just a way of talking about it. But in the 12 and 12, he says, it's a spiritual axiom. Whenever I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. I own it. I'm responsible for it. That's my role. Whose anger is it? Whose feeling is it? Whose disturbance is it? Oh, yeah, that would be me. Byron Katie, it's just a great question. What percentage of the disturbance comes from you? Oh, that would be 100%. It's my feeling, it's my reaction. Circumstances and events just happen and reveal themselves and impact us. Circumstances and events impact us. It's true. But our reaction to circumstances and events are the problem. After 10 years of doing this work and having a pretty vibrant spiritual awakening and practice, when I went to do the fourth step for the third time, and I was given instructions on the resentment inventory, I called the men back after a week of prayer and reflection. And I said, I don't have any resentments. Yeah, 1994. I don't have any resentments. And he said, well, try a couple words. Who annoys you? Who irritates you? I got 10 names on the phone because they weren't as deep and gross as disturbance or resentment, but they were mosquitoes that were nipping at me, annoyed and irritated. So have this open mind about your thoughts, your feelings, your attitudes. This is the bondage of self the big book talks about. Yes, addiction, but I'm not talking about addiction. I'm talking about unmanageability. Addiction is a problem. It's just not the problem. Today, here you are. I hope you have a pen and paper. If not, be just reflective about these questions. Where's your life not working today? How effective are your efforts today? How effective have they been in the last 3 months? Keep it relevant, keep it now. This is not about ancient history. This is not about the time you were in addiction. This is not about the time you were in early recovery. This is not how about the last month? How effective have your efforts been? Seriously, do you want to change? Are you willing to take the risk of trying something new, of being fully accountable and transparent? What would that change look like? It's one thing to look at your present moment and see as Dr. Berger calls them, the unhealthy coping strategies or the default reactions. Love those new words. For me, they're new. And it's much more productive for us to create a vision of where am I going? What strengths would I need? The word in a different context would be virtue. It comes from the Latin word virtus, which means strength. If I'm dishonest with myself, I probably need to be rigorously honest. That would be the virtue. Focus on the virtue and not on the vice, if you will. What is the invitation to action? Dr. Berger made a huge point of it in his opening comments. Everything else is interesting, but not that relevant. My thoughts, my knowledge, my feelings, my attitude, my memories, they're all relevant to our human experience. But the most important life-changing component is action. Dr. Siegel at UCLA, he confirmed what wisdom people from 5,000 years have said. We change our brain when we change our actions. Now we know it biologically, physiologically. It's good to know better. It's good to feel better. But when we do better, we change our brain so that we can know better and can feel better. Actions, the movement of our feet is life-changing. The 12 steps was the process that I experienced. I'm not going to make too much comment on that, but I've made the comment. The problem is powerless, but we've become brain dead to the word. no choice is my word. To wake me up to the reality. It's a fixed reality. I do not have a choice over my addiction. It is a problem until it's not the problem. The problem is unmanageability. That's what we're talking about today. The proper use of our willpower, the proper use of our free will. At least my interpretation of the big book's approach is the human condition. Yes, it's written for the alcohol problem, but Bill says it throughout, it's only a symbol of the problem. It's an indication of a problem. It's not the problem. You know many people, you may be one of them, that got free from your addiction, but your life is still a piece of not integrated tapestry. I'll be kind. That's about unmanageability. That's what we're talking about today. Alignment. It's not in the big book, that word, but it captures what I consider to be step 3. We're out of alignment when we're making decisions based on self-will, self-centeredness. We're out of alignment. Look at the crossed hands. The higher power hand is the flow of reality. I misuse my free will with self-will, willfulness rather than willingness. And the whole point of emotional sobriety, this is the point, is to be alignment. Now, I could have said to be in alignment with reality at the bottom, but step 3 is about alignment with a caring power. I'm not doing a talk on step 3 today, or even step 2. I'm assuming that you have some positive attitude toward it, or at least today, an open mind to it. Because we want to identify those obstacles to alignment as reality. And Dr. Berger talked about it. Being in the now, not yesterday even, let alone when you were a child. Most of the people on the call today are 18 or 21 or over. But the story keeps you in bondage in the shackles of a child. That's that trauma that is real. Dr. Berger used a different word for it. Post-traumatic growth. Yes, it is important to identify it. It is important to work with it. Sometimes we need professional help. We're talking about working through the step process about our disturbance and resentment. Fear and dishonesty certainly are parts of the step 4 process, but we're focused, very laser focused on resentments. We're going to take a look at column 3 here. This is the first part. What I call column 3 is that third column on page 65. When I was introduced to it the first time, the man had me do like a crossword puzzle. Connect column 3 in the page 65, those words, there's 7 words there. The 8th would be fear. But there's 7 words on page 65, but there is no definition and there's no instruction on the application of the words. The second time I went through the steps, the man gave me a definition and gave me a specific instructions for the application. And it changed my life because it helped me see my beliefs. All right, so you see that I wear glasses. And I look through my glasses at reality. My glasses determine what I see on the physical level. My glasses determine. If my glasses were warped, I would see warped. But I also know now, thanks to Dr. Berger and other education, that the glasses through which I look determine what I see, and the lens through which I look are my beliefs. I didn't know that. I have to take a look at my beliefs because I see reality as I am, not as it is. And this process helps me take a look at the lenses through which I'm looking. It sounds a little tricky, I'm looking through the lens until I have a process that allows me to look at the lens. And when I look at the lens, I see that my beliefs about myself are distorted. My beliefs about others are distorted. My beliefs about life are delusionary. And again, Dr. Berger taught me this one word. It's a shortcut technique. If you want to know what your beliefs are, pay attention to the use of the word should. I should, they should, life should. That word, a great word, maybe, but it reveals to us what our beliefs are, because I have a standard, a litmus test as to what I mean by that. Dr. Berger, I'm going to go to the column 3 format here in a minute, but perhaps you have some comments on what I said to prepare us for that work.
No, I think you laid out the situation very, very well. And look, as we do this, keep in mind, what are my expectations, right? Because our expectations, we get a clue of them, if you will. We need to be suspicious as soon as we say a should or supposed to.
Yeah.
That tells you that there's an expectation lurking somewhere in the bushes, right? Or somewhere in our consciousness. So as we do this work, pay attention, see if you can identify what are the expectations, or what is the expectation underlying the disturbance. Now, what we see is that our expectations are also can be linked to our hopes.
Yes.
So sometimes we hope things will be a certain way, and our hopes are always grounded in our experience. Sometimes they develop as a way of trying to reverse some very painful experiences of the past. I hope that now my future is going to be different. In fact, I'm going to expect it to be different. And that's where the trouble comes in. If what we say in the program had so much wisdom, and the more I dig into emotional sobriety and more I understand it, we can make plans, but not plan the results. We can have hopes, but if we are passive in the realization of those hopes, they just become fantasy. And you are going to see that our passivity is a big culprit in a lot of our difficulties. I see people get mad in situations at other people for not doing something they wanted them to do. And then I'll ask a simple question. Well, did you tell them that's what you wanted? And they look at me like, well, of course not. I go, well, wow, that's quite an expectation. You expect to get your need met and for the other person to give you what you want, but you've never asked for it. I mean, how does that work? Well, it works because we get caught in these fantasies that if you cared about me, you would know what I want. I mean, and that's such a fantasy. I laugh about it, but I do know that it's terribly painful. So anyway, it was a great setup, Herb. I'm looking forward to what we're going to do next.
Well, just to reinforce, every one of us, even today, right now, Herb and Alan, it's true for us, maybe not as gross as it used to be, but we have a script.
Yeah.
We have a story. We have a script. Now, I've adjusted my script.
Yeah.
But I'm still capable of having some worm in the wood there.
Yeah.
Dr. Luskin, in his book, Forgive for Good, Alan and I have both embraced Dr. Luskin's work and his books. I believe that's true for Alan. And he uses the term unenforceable rules. Alan, talk about that for just a minute.
Well, that is a great way of describing what an expectation is in terms of how it manifests itself in a relationship, because these expectations then take the shape of these unenforceable rules. Like an unenforceable rule would, if you love me, you would know what I want before, and I wouldn't have to ask you for it. See, that's an unenforceable rule. Now, it's a little misleading because when we say it's unenforceable, it means I can't call up the police department and say, look, my wife did this thing again. Would you come over here and give her a ticket? Or if it's really egregious, would you arrest her? That can't happen. So when we say it's unenforceable, we try to enforce these rules by guilting another person. See, this is the manipulation that goes on to try to get the other people to do what we think we need them to do for us to be okay. Bill calls it, we step on the toes of others and then they retaliate. And then we get so surprised that they're upset with us. Well, of course they are, because we're demanding that they do what we want and we're not respecting who they are. See, that's not going to work in a relationship. But let me go back to this thing. So what happens is if I have this expectation, this unenforceable rule, and you don't do it, and I'm not conscious that that's what I'm doing, then I'm going to do things like say, well, you're not a very good person because you're behaving this way. You should be more loving. You should be more understanding. You should be this. But see, I never finished the sentence and say, you should be that way, because if you were that way, I'd feel much better about myself.
We'd all feel much better.
I mean, we never add that part because it would start to expose what we're really up to. And like I said, a lot of these things are unconscious. We're not bad people. We got some bad habits, but we're not bad people, but we do have bad habits that we need to take a look at.
Yeah, unproductive, not effective, ineffective, unhealthy habits. They really are habits. And how do you change a habit? You change a habit by attempting different behavior.
That's right.
And that
you really do. It's a very intentional thing.
Well, that's the word too. Another word to capture today: intentional. See, we're talking about consciousness. If you don't know better, you can't do better. Gurdjieff, a Russian philosopher of the 19th century, says most people are asleep dreaming that they're awake.
Yeah.
Oh my God, 48 years old with the educational background that I had, totally self-reflective, philosophy, psychology, theology, totally self-reflective, therapy, self-help, totally self-reflective. I was clueless. I mean, I didn't see the truth. It wasn't that I denied it.
Yeah.
No. I literally was shocked and embarrassed when the curtains were pulled back. So that's why that serenity prayer that we started out with and the comments that we made about it, influence. What can I influence? Not control.
Yeah.
Not control. Not actually even manage very well on my own power was at least my conclusion with the step process. I needed the power in the universe that isn't me, that's available to me, that I can have a relationship with. I can have this functional, powerful relationship with fill in the blank. Now, I've filled in the blank many times, and I've changed the word many times, and I've changed the concept many times. Doesn't make any difference. I believe that it's there, and I operate as if it is. And you made a comment, Alan, earlier, which is just so critical, that my spiritual director said about meditation. You're as powerless over your meditation and your spiritual life as you are over alcohol, having no power at all. You're as powerless over your meditation and spiritual development as you are over alcohol, having no power at all. You're responsible for the effort, and the results are none of your business. Oh, now I would make the comment that Dr. Berger implied. Oh, the results are my business, in the sense if I'm not getting the results, change your actions. We know the definition currently in the world of sort of the informal of insanity, don't we? Dr. Berger, I love the way you phrase it. What's insanity?
Well, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting not different results, but better results.
First time I heard you say that, I went,
I
"Oh,
know
my God."
that's what we do. We're so much more, outrageous than when we want to acknowledge. And and then you one time, and I really appreciate it when you brought this, insanity is not a clinical term.
Right.
It just is reflecting not a soundness of thinking. And so you can see that if I do the same thing, things will be better. What basis can I draw that conclusion on? There's none. That's not sound thinking. It's just not sound thinking. And because there's a huge delusional component to all of this stuff, we are unable to see the lack of soundness in our thinking.
Yeah. The word insanity or sanity comes from the Latin sanus, S-A-N-U-S, which means health. When you put an I-N in front of it, it just means not healthy. And Bill knew that. Look at page 37 in the big book, the end of Jim's story, the guy who put a little whiskey in his milk. Bill said, that was insane.
That's right.
That is a lack of perspective.
That's right.
Unhealthy thinking, not psychiatric or psychological, just unhealthy.
Yeah, no, I had a guy that it's so funny because that story repeats itself so many times in life, right? I had a young man, been in and out of treatment, and he was doing pretty good. He had about 4 months at this point in time and was really trying to work the program, going to meetings and stuff. And he got this respiratory infection. And, he just heard that, a little whiskey and some milk can be a wonderful home, remedy, right?
Yeah, warm brandy, sure.
Warm brandy. I mean, and so before you know it, he's got a fifth of I think rum on the counter.
Yeah.
And and now his ex-wife is pulling the custody because he had his child over at the house and endangered the child. I mean, that's the kind of lack of soundness of thinking we have, because that disease process takes over and we lose our judgment.
Yeah. Which is unique, quite frankly, to alcoholics. Not that it's not present in non-addicts. It is a little bit, but in addicts, it's on steroids. And
that's right.
One of the common things is we do not learn from our experiences.
Yeah, that's it. That's the common thing that stands out across the board. And this is how you know if you're in recovery or not. Are you learning and growing?
Yeah, it's not that you're not going to make mistakes. Bill said in the big book, page 84, watch for resentment and fear and dishonesty and selfishness. Watch for them, pay attention, be conscious when they crop up.
Yeah.
No, I'm quoting.
Not if,
when they crop up. Alan and I are very capable and probably have experience within the last week, all right, sliding off the path just a little bit and getting back on the path just a lot. Yeah. All right. So let's, first of all, your work, the people who are here now who want to do some work. Identify one resentment that you have that you would like to address today. Now, if you don't have, quote, resentment, look at anger. Do you have some reaction of anger within the last day or the last week? Keep it relevant, keep it current. Not necessarily about past history, but if you have that, bring it. That's one of the grosser ones. That's great. If you have a history of some anger, maybe it's connected to some trauma of circumstance or events. Use the word disturbed. What does that bring up in you in terms of your personal reaction to circumstances and people? Disturbed. Or like this man did with me in a very finer filter, he said, well, who irritates you, Herb? Who annoys you? Or what irritates you? Or what annoys you? Just one or two. That'll be sufficient, because one of my teachers says, and it's been my now 100% experience over the last 30 years, what we do any one place, we do every place, because it's who we are. We're the reactor, the actor and reactor in our life. So there is a pattern, because it's all about my reactions to circumstances and people. And then Rainey, if you could put up the column 3 worksheet, that would be wonderful. Yeah, there it is. I had a person take a look at the work that I've done over time that's been fine-tuned by the workshop participants, but she actually did just a wonderful job of making it cleaner and clearer and giving some maximum space. Her name is Tracy, and she, on her own initiative, said that to me, and I've adopted it. It's much cleaner and clearer. And so let's use that. So when I resent or am disturbed or annoyed by, put the name on a piece of paper if you don't have the worksheet there, and then give the reason. See, I call them column 1 and column 2 because that's the way page 65 is laid out. What's the reason? Oh, because they gossiped about me, or they stole from me, or they hurt my feelings. All right. So far, 1 and 2 are pretty easy. We know who or what circumstance offended us, and we know what the offense is. The big book uses the term hurt, threatened, or interfered with. See, we want to be safe. We want to be comfortable. That's a survival instinct on our part. Bill calls them instincts gone awry. Fight, flight, and freeze. I'm not going to unpack that right now. I've done that at different times in different places. But he uses the term self-esteem. This is not psychological self-esteem, as I see it. This is about my belief about who I am. What is my deep belief? Now, I can't look at the lenses through which I'm looking. I mean, here the sort of the conundrum there. I'm looking, but I'm looking through a lens, and I'm looking through a lens at the lens through which I'm looking. If that sounded complicated, it is. That's why people have some difficulty with this. But the prompter word is I am. So on a stage, this was a technique this man shared with me. On a stage with the person with whom you resent. Let's use Bob. Those of you who have been exposed to me know Bob. He was a coworker. He was an officer of the corporation like I was. He'd been with the company 20 years like I was. But I had been drinking for 17 of that 20, and now I was sober for 3, and I had not changed. I thought I had changed because I wasn't drinking, but my behavior hadn't changed. I was still a jerk, and that's being kind. What is my deep belief about who I am? With Bob on the stage, he's on the stage. I'm looking at him in a theater. Bill loves the theater analogy. I am the best salesperson in the company. I am an extraordinary human being, very experienced, hardworking, and entitled to a lot of respect and a lot of reward. See, that's my belief at that time, 1988. I was 4 years sober. Well, what's my fear? I do believe that putting that word and that question next to the self-esteem and each of the components going down helped open the curtain to me, because for the very first time, I looked at the opposite of what I believed. Well, they may not see me as I see me. As simple as that, it began a crack in my armor. I know it in retrospect. Obviously, I did, well, maybe not obviously, but I didn't know it at the time. So write down your answer about your belief about who you are. I am. It's not psychological. It's not low self-esteem. It's not high self-esteem. It's never negative. It's never negative. Put yourself on the theater stage. The theater now is filled with people who are important to you. It could be your family. It could be your coworkers. It could be the people in your 12-step fellowship. Put in the audience the people who are looking at you in relationship with Bob. Now, the word in the big book is pride, but there's no definition, and it's certainly not the pride of the 7 capital sins. Bill had no knowledge of that. Later on in the 12 and 12, he uses the 7 capital sins, but that's because he was being trained by and taught by a Jesuit priest, Father Ed Dowling, but that's much later, 1953, 51, something like that. This is 1939 that he's writing the big book, and it's not changed. They still use the word pride, but there's no definition of it. So the man said, how do you want other people, the people in the audience, to see you being treated by Bob? And he said, be outrageous, stretch it, step outside of your comfort level, step outside of civilized norms. The people in the audience should see Bob respecting me. And he said to me, Herb, is that all you want is respect? He said, stretch it, be outrageous. And I said, well, on a stage in front of my colleagues, I want Bob to be deferential to me. Well, what does that mean? He said to me, well, when I walk in a room, I want him to stand and bow. Well, how about women? I want them to stand and curtsy. If you walked into a room for a meeting, how would you want the people in the meeting to react when you walk in the room? Well, I want them to all stand and almost catch their breath. He's here. Oh my God, it was embarrassing. And he said to me, wow, you have a little king down inside of you, don't you? And I did determine that it wasn't a little king. It was a very big king. Yeah, exactly. What's your ambition? What do you want? I want to get the promotion that is on the table right now. 1988, I was one of 3 people legitimately being considered for running the Los Angeles office. What's my fear? I won't get it. Security is a very different question. What do I need? Now, I'm hoping that you're listening and translating what I'm saying into answers for your own resentment and or disturbance and or annoyance and or irritation. That's the whole point of this. As Dr. Berger indicated, this is not an intellectual exercise. Oh, you will begin to know something if you haven't ever been exposed to this before. Or you may even have a deeper experience if you have been exposed to it before. But that's not the point here for you to learn something. The point here from our standpoint is for you to experience something. Learn it, yes, but apply it to yourself so that it goes from your head to your heart, someplace into your behavior as an experience. Security is very different than ambition. Ambition, what do I want? Security, what do I need? The difference would be, I want breakfast. Security is, I need oxygen. And so you hear the difference. There's a powerful difference between what I want and what I need. Now, there's a question connected to need. Why? I need to run the office. I need to have the promotion. Why? Because I don't want a local boss. I don't want somebody looking over my shoulder and holding me accountable, because they might see the truth. My gosh, the fear, they might see that I'm not who I really represent myself to be. First time, crack in the armor. The light began to just gently shine through as to, oh, underneath this grandiosity of mine is a sense of low self-esteem, is a sense that I'm really not capable, I'm really not competent, I'm really not deserving of this promotion. First time. Personal relations. How do I want other people to act? What is my litmus test of reality here? I expect coworkers to support me, to anticipate my every need, and to respond to me without questions. My fear is they will disrespect me. In fact, they will disrespect me publicly. They will embarrass me publicly. That still probably is my single most sensitive default position, unhealthy coping strategy, is a sense of being publicly embarrassed by somebody pointing out that I'm wrong because I'm wrong. Making a mistake publicly. It's just a horrible feeling for me. Well, one of the items on this list on page 65 is sex. And this man said to me, you know, Herb, perhaps, and he's just speculating here. He has no basis for this comment that he's about to make to me. He said, perhaps since the third element in the step 4 inventory is sex, the first being resentment, the second being fear, the third being sex. And that's a whole inventory, an extensive inventory, 9 questions on page 69. And that's about genital sexuality. Perhaps, just perhaps, Bill doesn't want to be redundant here. And he's not talking about sex itself, sex relations. He's talking about your relations with gender. I hope it was true that he had that consciousness, but that's neither here nor there because it was so relevant to me. What's your belief about men? What your litmus test of the model man? Well, what's your relationship? What's your belief about the ideal woman? Now, I kept it to the workplace here. The ideal man in the workplace is a strong, independent, smart, using initiative, and able to bring projects to successful conclusion. They lock arm in arm with other men and march forward to solve problems. What's my fear? Is that I'm not a real man. That in fact, they'll disrespect me. That in fact, they won't want to be associated with me. First time, a crack in the armor. Again, because that fear went down underneath the parts on the left-hand side that I'm answering, what is my belief, is in my head, but my fear is in my heart and in my gut. There are 2 different analytical processes here. A little difficult sometimes to learn how to switch from the left to the right, but that's my recommendation. In fact, I have people hold their head because they're thinking analytically to determine what my model is. And then when they go over to the fear inventory, to put their hands on their heart, to put their hands on their gut. What's the feeling that comes up when you say what I just said? Now, it's embarrassing to me to reveal to you what I was thinking in 1988, but please cut me some slack. It was a generational thing, I'm assuming. But be that as it may, a model woman in a workplace environment, first, we didn't have any professionals. They were all administrative people at that time. A model woman does what she's told. A model woman is a second-class citizen. A model woman will take care of making sure that they clean up my mistakes. A model woman who works for me even will go get my car washed. Oh, I'm serious, I'm sorry. A model woman, if they're attractive enough, are available to me for sexual use. Yeah, that was who I was in those days. 4 years sober, actually. I thought I was a Renaissance man, and as it turns out, when I did this work, I turned out to be a Neanderthal. And I was very embarrassed, as I am even sitting right here. I'm actually feeling the blush. But that's the truth. And my fear is women will disrespect me, women will reject me, women will embarrass me. Number 7, pocketbook. Well, it may not be about money. In this case, it was, because there was money attached to being promoted. So what's my pocketbook? What's affected here? It could be the money, or it could be the value. But eventually I came to nothing should interfere. Nothing, no one, nothing should interfere with me getting exactly what I want, when I want, to the extent that I want it. Well, that's called narcissism in a formal term, and I discovered that when I was working with Dr. Berger as my therapist back in the day. And he went to his manual, his DSM, and he just opened it. He took a page out, he photocopied it, and he gave it to me. And it was the 9 characteristics of narcissism. And he said, read it out. And he says, the only thing missing is your picture. I mean, he had a smile on his face, but I was now ready to really hear that, and seeing it as a diagnosable personality disorder. Really, I mean, it sealed the experience that I was having. All right, so let's take a look at your thanks. Leave it up, please, Rainey. Thanks for putting it up. Now I want to hear, Dr. Berger and I want to hear from you, from your experience and or your difficulty in answering these questions, as getting clarification with them. Once you get clear on self-esteem, that is, what is my belief about myself? It's not visible to the naked eye. You see, I believe this worksheet penetrates the unconscious. It goes just a little bit below. If it's not directly in terms of the self-esteem, it will be somewhat revealed in the fear. So pay attention to that feeling that comes up when you say what you believe, or at least you explore what you believe. I'm going to ask Dr. Berger to comment on it first, and then I want you, if you're interested, to have some dialogue with both myself and Dr. Berger.
So I have a thing. I have money as my resentment.
Sure.
So I'll just start. When I resent money for having a hold on me or messing with me, did it hurt or threaten or interfere with my self-esteem? So what is my deep belief? I am an extremely frugal and careful person around money and share it as well.
Right. What's your fear?
I'm terrified of it.
Or to be a little more specific. What's the fear? It's really helpful to be real specific. Yes, we know you have fear. So you've indicated I have terror. What's the source of that for you? What does it look like? What would be a synonym for it? What are you afraid of happening?
That I'm going to be completely irresponsible, that I'm going to just waste it all.
There you go. My fear is I'll waste it. I'll be irresponsible and I'll run out.
Yes. Oh,
Well,
yeah. I'll be impoverished.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. The more specific that you can make it, the more relevant it will be. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And what about your belief about others in relationship to money? Number 2.
The pride thing. I want others to see that money will adorn me with fun and will direct my relationship with it so that I don't have to do anything about it.
Oh, there you go. That's the key, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't have to be responsible. And what's your fear?
The money doesn't give a shit about me.
Yeah, and neither do the people. But anyway, that's another dynamic. They're too much preoccupied with themselves to be thinking about us, aren't they?
Yes. Yes.
Ambition, what do you want?
I want to command this money responsibly and in a fun way.
All
I want
right.
to have control.
All right. All right. And what's your fear?
That I'm totally incapable.
That's it. Yeah. Now, none of this is inherently true just because you think it and say it. You're
Right.
just basing what you're thinking and saying so that you can, and feeling, so that you can examine it.
Yes.
The whole column 3 is a lie. Yeah. So
Thankfully.
well, it's thankful only when we see it as a lie and not the truth.
Right.
But the lie dominated my life for 48 years until I saw the truth, and then I was set free. Number 4, security. Oh, go ahead. You were going to ask something.
Well, and what I think happens for me is I become totally paralyzed.
That's what fear does.
Yeah.
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 So number 4, what do I need in order to be okay?
And why?
I need permission to spend money responsibly because otherwise I'll be paralyzed.
Okay. All right. And your fear?
That I'll just stay paralyzed, that I won't do anything about it.
Underneath there's a different question also. Who do you need permission from?
Myself.
Okay.
So is that the fear then, maybe, that I won't give myself permission?
I can't tell you what your fears are, but you can. Yeah. And
I'll take it.
And it's not right or wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's a feeling.
Yep.
And
yeah.
And if you did this work tomorrow, you'd have different responses. If you did it next week, you'd have different responses because it's going to strike you differently.
Yeah.
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 So that's one thing that people need to know. This is not a test where you get a grade. This is a prompter where you have an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Listen, I'm back. I'd like to just add something to this.
Please.
See, what you're talking about is needing permission. See, a lot of times when we do this work, we start to realize that we're not just one self. See, there's a conflict. There's a conflict between the part of you that wants to spend money more responsibly and the other part of you that doesn't want to have any boundaries. That's the issue. And resolving that becomes what's going to help you act more in the way you want to act, is to realize you're of two minds. You're not of one mind. One part of you wants to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it and not suffer any consequences. And the other part of you wants to grow up and be responsible. Well, they're at war. And if you don't face that war, you're not going to grow up. See, that's going to be the problem, because then you'll think, well, I should be this way or I should be that way. And it's not a matter of shoulds at all. It's a matter of resolving two parts of you that are operating from a very different goal, from a very different idea.
Boy, and I see that thread in so many other areas too.
Well, it's going to be. See, one of the great things about doing this work is we start to see the causes and conditions of our suffering, right? What is really...
Say it again, Alan, because that is critical to the motive and mission of this work. Say it again, please.
We begin to see the underlying causes and conditions of our suffering, of the problems that we're having. And of course, they're thematic. Because, there's going to be a pattern to my behavior that reveals the source of my suffering. That's what Herb and I realized when we started to do this stuff, is when people even did the the versions of the fourth step inventory in the big book, when they started to just do the columns, and even if they didn't get to column 4, they started to be able to see a pattern. Now, the most obvious was that I was selfish, that it was all about me all the time. Right. But that's at one level. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
See, and that's what we're starting to get down to. And what Herb has done here so well is to create an inquiry that keeps us looking and investigating.
Yes.
See, that's what this is that we're engaged in. And so we got to pay attention to what we uncover as we go through the process. You uncovered a very, very big conflict in yourself.
Right. Yeah. And I also want to give a step back from what we're doing here just for a minute to get a perspective. Column 3 is 50% of what we're doing.
Exactly.
Column 4 is the other 50%. So column 3 raises the issue of our beliefs. Column 4 raises the issues of our motives and our responsibility. And with both of them, we get a complete picture. It's nasty. It's just nasty. But it's life-changing. It's life-changing because when we see the truth, you heard it, all right? When you see the truth, it will set you free. Well, a good friend of mine says, when you see the truth, it will set you free, but first it will embarrass you.
Yeah.
All right. So continue. Go ahead, Carmen.
It's already feeling like, I mean, that part about that I have the two different sides of myself that are at war with each other.
Sure.
It feels like there's yet more underneath that, and maybe it's going to come up in the motive piece or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I'm confident that's the full experience is when you finish column 4, but don't think that you are going to have an experience with column 3 because you're beginning to pull the curtains back. But as I said, there's 20 different layers of curtains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm already having an experience with it. I'm in tears.
Well,
okay. Yeah. Wonderful.
That one part of you wants to do whatever it wants to do. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Say that again, please, Dr. Berger.
That part of you that wants to do whatever it wants to do sounds very angry to me.
Oh, yeah. Really pissed off. Yeah. Because I feel like I haven't been able to do that.
Yeah. My image was that there's 2 people on a stage that represent Carmen. Yeah. One is the 4-year-old that's going to stomp her feet.
Yeah.
And the other is a mature woman who wants to be a wisdom woman. And that's the contrast, right?
Yeah.
But see, this is very important what you just said. See, that part of you that is angry feels like you have been stopped from doing things you've wanted to do. Yep. But you see, that's where there's a deflection of responsibility. See, so hopefully the wisdom, the wise self would now start to work with that other self that feels like a victim. And then whenever we feel like a victim, we're going to victimize others. I mean, that says, I can't tell you, Herb talks about there's physical laws like the law of gravity. You jump off a building, you're going to fall. Well, there's psychological and spiritual laws. One of them is if you feel like a victim, you're going to victimize other people and not feel bad about doing it because you feel justified.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Well, it's not a cool thing. We do a lot of damage with that. We really do.
But you said that you share your resources, you're willing to share your resources. But my experience is if I'm disturbed, I'm going to share that generously and disturb you.
Oh. Okay.
Well said, Herb. Right on.
Number 5, personal relations.
I'm not even done with this yet. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Personal relations. How do I expect this relationship should be? Yeah. I expect it to be free and easy, and then I feel good about how I handle it.
There you go. And what's your fear?
Yeah.
So what's your fear?
that I won't find the resources to do
See,
that.
it's really that simple. It's just the yin and the yang of it. That's right. I mean, don't oversimplify it. And this is for everybody else. You're doing a great job. But for everybody else, do not get into a formula. Do not just look at the worksheet and answer the questions as the examples there. That's the easier, softer way. And there's no experience. Yeah, see, I can tell you're having an experience because there's emotions here and your snot's coming out. I mean, I don't want to be gross, but it's just, that's a compliment to your clarity here and your courage, by the way, to be so vulnerable in front of a group and the first out of the chute. So,
well, thank you. I have gained so much already. But I will finish this worksheet right now.
All right. So what's your gender belief?
Well, here's what I wrote. That the ideal whatever money should always.
Well. Let's get a little more specific. And I want to hear what you're going to say. But the way I would prefer you to phrase it is men handle money. Women handle money. What's your expectation? What's your model? What's your litmus test?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
First read what you wrote. I want to hear.
Well, I wrote that there are researched and well-defined boundaries with amounts that make me happy and comfortable.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But
okay, so now if you were the model woman, the height of financial management, what would that look like?
it would look like I just get given amounts of money and I can do with it whatever I damn well please. That I don't have any responsibility for it.
Okay. All right. And what's your fear?
It's not going to be like that.
Exactly. But I think underneath your belief, you heard something, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you hear?
Well, about myself, you mean?
Yes, please.
The helplessness,
well,
the victim,
No, I didn't hear that.
Oh.
I heard the fantasies of a 4-year-old.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
It should be easy and there should be an abundance and it should be a flow and I don't have to think about being responsible.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Well, what about what thoughts do you have about a man in contrast to a woman? Do you have any different degree of measurement? I'm not saying that it's necessary. I'm just saying what's real for you. Or do you have the same thoughts about women and men in that area?
Yeah, that the man takes care of it all. That leads me in this. That I can just be hands off and he takes charge.
Oh yeah, you're an old-fashioned girl.
Well, and the irony of this is I'm in a lesbian relationship. So let's talk about how convoluted that is.
Well, but you could transfer that, couldn't you? That my partner, whether it's male or female, my partner is responsible to take care of the money, and I'm the princess that just gets to enjoy it. How's that? Oh, I think that was a home run.
The 4-year-old princess, please.
Right. Yeah. Right. Good. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. So what did you write for pocketbook?
That nothing should interfere or affect or lessen my emotional security.
All right. Okay. So you translated the money into emotional security.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope you pay attention to that. That's a wonderful insight. And what's your fear?
Oh, that I'll always be messed up around money.
There you go.
That it's going to control me forever.
Oh, well, that's another dimension of it. Yeah. So you got more specific there. Messed up is a good term, but then you dug down a little bit and you saw it's going to control me. My concern about it.
That I'll be forever disturbed by it.
I'll be forever. Oh, yeah. It's black and white. Yeah. So now that you've written it out, I think you had an experience when you wrote it out. That's why you volunteered. But now you've talked it out and it brought the experience to the surface. Talk about both, please.
Well, the it's interesting. This resentment did not come up on my resentment list until very recently. I've done the other people thing, and then it was like, oh wow, oh my God, money is a huge thing for me, and I've never admitted that. And the feelings of this is like, oh my God, it's like, well, that hearing about being a 4-year-old, and I'm blanking out.
Just take a deep breath. Yep.
That war, that, and I can just, my brother was born a year earlier. I can just see it. I can just, that's when I felt like I disappeared. Was it about 4?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure Dr. Berger has some comments about that. You want to make any comment, Alan?
No, I just
All
think
right.
that it's, you're processing this at a very, very deep level, and there's a lot to be said about it, is that, these parts in us form as an adaptation to what's going on in our environment at the time.
Yep.
And they, as we become adults, they are outdated, right? They're just.
See, that's the point. That's really the point. And Bill nails it in the 12 and 12, doesn't he? In step 6 and 7, he says, this is a process where the child becomes an adult. Right. And that's where I think you see the 4-year-old and your current situation as a wisdom woman. And there's still that. Dr. Berger talked about it before we got started in the process. About this conflict in us of these two things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has never come up before. I mean, I've done untold number of 4th steps and therapy, and this has never come up for me before. So,
well, there was some sort of a trauma back at the time when you had a sibling rival you for attention and you disappeared, and it's ancient history, and yet the feelings have still, they're present and they hijack you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Fascinating process. Thank you both very much.
Oh, thank you for participating in it so vulnerably. Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, you've already made me cry, Herb.
I didn't make you do anything.
Well, my reaction to what you said, because what you said put into words what I have felt my whole life.
What was that?
You talked about your ideal woman back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I've lived my whole life from the day I was born.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought I had made some inroads in that. And I really think my whole life I've known that I wasn't less than, even though at every turn I was told I was less than.
Right.
But I've actually written to Alan about this in the last couple of days. What's going on right now just means that it isn't going to ever change. It isn't ever going to change. And not just for me, but for
what is it?
That women are less than.
In other people's eyes, but who are you responsible for changing?
I'm responsible for changing myself, and I don't believe I'm less than in my eyes. But at every turn, when I interact with other people, I don't feel that way. And so this is where I am in the whole process.
That's your work.
Yeah, for 3 or 4 years, I withdrew from the world because I didn't know how to cope with all of that. Right. And the life that I tried to create, which wasn't real, I recognize that. The life I tried to create was totally false.
You were coping by withdrawing and painting a story that you felt safe with. And now you've grown.
I've grown, but I do feel that I am withdrawing because I don't want to hear men say the things that you said.
Yes,
And
yes.
I hear that all the time.
Well, you
And-
hear it, and you will continue to hear it.
I know,
All right.
I know.
So it's your responsibility to be in an environment that's not being said, but at the same time, whose responsibility is it to change their reaction to the outside world?
Who is it? Well, it's my responsibility, of course. And
Wait. Is it, of course? I mean, you do that in
No.
the head. You do that in the head.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
know.
hear
I'm
it.
good at the
I
head. I'm
didn't
good
hear
at the
it.
head.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm very good at the head because it hurts too much to
Well,
take.
and it's hard to be in a
Yes.
culture. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that plays into, and I know I'm not answering the questions the way I'm supposed to, but I think the
Well,
thing that plays.
But see, supposed to.
I knew you'd catch me on that. Is that I'm 75.
Yeah.
And I'm
Young woman
still,
by my standards.
well, I think actually I am younger than I chronologically am. But I don't
it's not
see,
too late.
I don't see how I can effect any kind of change.
Oh,
I can effect it in myself, but I don't see how I can effect it beyond myself.
that's probably realistic.
I
And
know.
so why don't you release it?
Well, or this, Susie, see, I think maybe you haven't let me say it another way. See, I think that there's still a part of you that is highly impacted by those ideas. And it's, if you were totally resolved in it, you wouldn't have the strong reaction to it that you're having.
Why do I have to be resolved in those ideas?
Because you don't have to be resolved in those ideas. You have to resolve those ideas. You have to have confidence that you're never going to let yourself play that role again. That's the issue, not what other people are doing, is you don't have that confidence in yourself.
No, actually, I think I'm okay.
Well,
I'm worried
then
about
you
my
wouldn't be-
granddaughters.
Well, all right. So then you don't have faith in their process.
I don't have faith in other things that I can't talk about because that's not on the top.
Well, but as their,
And you know what they are.
As you're the grandmother here, are you saying?
No, I don't have any relationship with my grandchildren,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right.
But I'm just saying my granddaughters are being affected by new laws in this country that are
Okay,
taking
so you're
away
not
from
talking-
them.
So you're not
Even
talking
more.
about yourself then. You're not talking
Well,
about.
I've already had those things taken away from me. I was already a cow that was bought to
Yeah.
produce children and to take care of everything like
But
Kurt described.
wait. Sure, there's a story here, of course.
Of course.
But you don't have any control. And as long as you have the fantasy that you should do something and control something so that their life isn't like yours, you're going to suffer. So this is about releasing like the Serenity Prayer says, I don't control it, I can influence it. So what can you influence in terms of the people that you're concerned about? And that's a rhetorical question for you to think about.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get to do that directly because you're
Correct.
alienated for whatever reason with your daughters. But see, there's other ways to manifest this.
Right.
See, if you're concerned, like we've talked about, there's ways to try to participate. We call that, when you hit this place, there's a call to action, right? And to get involved in movements that might, create a seed of change again in some ways. So it's not just
That's
that.
probably a really healthy recommendation, Alan, and I hope she hears that.
Yeah.
Well,
see,
I'm already doing it.
There you
I'm
go.
already
Hey,
doing it.
so then maybe you're in a better place than you're talking about.
Yeah. What can I do? What will I do?
I
What
think
can
I'm in a pretty good place. I think I've always been in a good
But you
place.
don't present it that way.
That's
Susie.
correct.
You got to hear this. The way you
Yeah.
talk about it is like you're messed up,
Yeah.
and you're not messed up from what you're saying. And that's what I saw right from the beginning. There was something incongruent in what you were saying. You talk like that you're having a problem here.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. There's a problem here that you're dealing with, is what's going on. You're not having a problem here. You're dealing with a problem. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
So you got to get more congruent in the way that you represent yourself, because you're going to be misunderstood, like you were a while with us trying to help you deal with, quote, your problem that you're dealing with. I mean, that you don't need help with, that you're dealing with it. And you're just kind of telling us how you're dealing with it.
And the key here for you, given Alan's comments, which I'm right on the money, is for you to get from what you've said and what you've done just today, what your perceived role is, and bring that to the fourth column work that we will do in a little bit. Your perceived role right today, as you did this work and had these conversations, what's your perceived role? If there was a script writer watching this, listening to it, and they're creating a movie or a series on television, what would be the nomenclature, the vocabulary that they would use in the script to discuss, to identify exactly your role, so that we know the costumes you're going to wear, the words you're going to say, the emotions you're going to feel, et cetera, et cetera. What is the 1 or 2 or 3 words that would, and this is rhetorical, that would capture your perceived role right now? And then take that into the fourth column. It could be that you'll have some additional experience.
What I do know is I can be a role model, and I actually know that I have things to give other women. And I am doing that on a fairly regular basis in recovery, but I'm also doing it in my community. It's just, it's a challenge to see that that things fail, even though I try to bring the right perspective out. And I've just experienced it in my hometown. And it breaks my heart. So I can only do what I can do.
I was thinking that the other two ahead of me would solve all my stuff, and I'd back out now.
And obviously that didn't work. So here you are. So what is your disturbance?
My disturbance is that there's a new administration in my apartment complex. And he's already putting the screws down on on some of the things.
So we're not interested in the story. We're interested in an answer. What are you disturbed about?
I am feeling infantilized by his actions.
Okay, all right. I resent the new owners for treating us like children.
Yes.
Got it. And who are you? Self-esteem, number one.
I believe I am deserving of respect and freedom to do as I please.
Nailed it. And your fear is? No, don't look at your notes.
I'm looking at my notes and it says that I can't.
Okay, that's it. All right. Go to pride. What did you write?
Others should see me as deserving of whatever I choose and hand over whatever I ask for, even what I haven't asked for.
Exactly. And what's your fear?
That I will have less.
Read what you wrote.
That what I have will be less than what I deserve.
All right. There's no right or wrong answer, but you're very clear in your written response. That's why I want you to read what you wrote, so that we can either confirm or clarify. What's your ambition?
My ambition is I want to continue to have the parking spots that I want. I want to have access to what's available, that whether I choose it or not, and not be penalized in any way.
Exactly. And what's your fear?
That I don't get anything I want.
Exactly. And what's security? What do you need and why?
I need to have
the same. Wrote.
I need to have the same as everybody else, and the things I want that they don't know enough to want.
And why?
Because it's my right.
Beautiful. Oh, I knew the answer. Wonderful. And your fear is?
That I'm not as worthy as everybody else.
All right. All right. You're seeing a nuance there. Number 5, personal relations.
I not to be publicly embarrassed and humiliated,
Okay. And fear.
that somebody will know that I shouldn't get what I want.
Oh, all right. There's no right or wrong answer. There's just your answer. Great.
Yeah.
What about gender relations? How does that play in here? Male and female. Mom.
Well, this is where I tap into previous things. Guys have the power.
Okay. A real man dominates and rules, and your
And
fear
limits and denies. Dominates, rules, limits, and denies.
and your fear is
That I will be denied what I deserve.
exactly. And how about women?
I have to take it without complaining.
Oh, okay. And a real woman is submissive to a man.
Yes.
All right. That's your
Mm, no. Who has such objection to that?
Well, but do you believe it or not?
Part of me believes
Yeah. We're having having a Wi-Fi connection problem. What's your fear?
my fear is that that might come true for me, even though I think it belongs in another generation.
Got it. Got it. Yes, absolutely wonderful. And pocketbook.
And it will come true for my grandchildren too. And be a legacy that I don't want to have. That's a fear I have.
No, I got it. Wonderful. Yeah, you're very expensive with it. Very insightful. Pocketbook.
My pocketbook is nothing should interfere with me getting what I want, need, etc. And that this guy can cause me not to have the apartment where I live.
All right. And your fear? Oh, that's what it is?
Yeah, the fear is that I will have no place to live.
I got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. So your writing, when you read your writing, you're very clear. You had wonderful insights, probably some that you'll be more conscious of when you do the 4th column. But what was your experience, number 1, in writing it and now in talking it?
I felt it was good to write it down because I was in agreement with that. And in sharing it, I'm experiencing the experience. Like I'm afraid that in talking about it, that it's gonna be taken from me.
Okay. All right. In the 4th column, perhaps you'll even have some more experience with it. I'm not going to make comment at this point,
Okay.
but you have set yourself up to do a good 4th column, meaning helpful and experiential. So just can you hold your breath for another, until we get to the other side of where we get to the 4th column. All right.
Thank you.
No, wonderful work. Thank you.
Something that happened this week has a specific person, but then I just made it about men. So when I resent men or this person.
Well, wait, let's make it specific to that person. I think the more specific, the more robust will be your comments, okay? Now, you don't have to tell us the name, but have the actual person in mind as you're unpacking it.
Okay. When I resent for thinking they're superior to me and to women.
Got it. Yeah. So number 1, self-esteem. Who are you?
I'm an extraordinary, smart, talented woman who's worthy of revere and respect.
Excellent. And what's your fear?
I am not smart and unworthy of respect.
Well, see, now that answer could go many different directions.
I know.
All right. All right. So that's the one you chose. It's perfect. It's wonderful. All right. And what about pride?
Okay.
How do you want other people to see you on a stage with this person being treated?
I want this person treating me like a genius, a precious prodigy, and say, wow, that's incredible. I wish I had your genius. Maybe this idea will help.
No, precious prodigy. What great vocabulary. That's great. And what's your fear when you say that?
I'm deluded and I'm as dumb and talentless as men think I am, or as men think women are.
Okay. All right. All right. Ambition. What do you want?
I put it to men. I want men to apologize for ever underestimating me and admitting women are actually superior to men.
All right. And your fear is?
Men will always oppress women and withhold respect and regard unless it involves getting sex.
Yeah. Yeah. Good insight. Security. What do you need and why?
I need men to catch up to Generation Z and see women as equal. Why? So that I can fully be myself and stop fighting to prove men are not what they imagine themselves to be.
Sure. And your fear?
Never, men will never respect, value me or women and will always feel superior.
Yeah. Just a slight into, I just can't resist. You're giving men an awful lot of power.
Yeah.
Over you. But
Yeah.
let's go on. That'll be more in the fourth column. Personal relations, number 5.
I expect, this is for men role, right? Mothers.
Oh, not yet. Number 5, please. Personal relations.
I don't know. I wrote, I expect to respect women as, I guess, men. I don't know what.
So
Okay.
what is the circumstance of your relationship with Mr. X here? Is it a work, or is it a neighborhood, or is it a church?
It was a works. It was
Co-workers. In the workplace, personal relations, co-workers.
Co-workers should respect women as equal in ability, intelligence, contribution in society, and not just sex objects.
And your fear is?
Men can't think beyond their penises and insecurities and control.
Okay, all right. Number 6, gender, real men, real women.
Should be able to separate their base desires and fears from their regard and respect for women.
And what's your fear?
Men are built to be just this way.
Yeah, all right. And women?
Women, an ideal woman is curvaceous, beautiful, smart, capable, and never panders to get a man.
And your fear is?
I crossed this out, so I'm going to read it. Men are, I want men to be sexually attracted to me and believe I'm superior at the same time. And then my fear is that I just want to punish men.
Oh,
I wrote 2.
yeah, no, I understand. All right, so a fear is that you're setting yourself up for punishment, that's a conscious or unconscious thing? I didn't quite understand that.
My fear is, the last one I wrote is that I'm walking around just wanting to punish men.
Oh, punish men. I hear it now. I heard it just the opposite.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
No, I get it.
Fear is that I secretly just want men to be sexually attracted to me and think I'm superior at the same time.
Yes, while you're giving them the whip. All right. Number 7, pocketbook.
Here, nothing should interfere with my ability to be myself and feel loved and safe. And something else, in a type of relationship with a man, in any type of relationship with a man.
Nice. Yes, nice. That I hope people heard that, because that takes all the money thing or finance thing out of it, but it talks about the value. So read it again, please. This is the value pocketbook that is coming to you in this section.
Nothing should interfere with my ability to be myself, feel loved and safe in any type of relationship with any man.
That's it. Yes. And your fear is?
Men only have interest in me for sex or none at all. And the older I get, the less I exist to them.
Yeah. All right. So as you wrote it out, clear, I'm confirming, very nice job unpacking it. I don't know whether you've had exposure or experience with that before, but it's unusual that people are really having a good clarity with regard to the work that people who have shared. What's your experience in writing it and now saying it out loud? Because normally there's 2 different experiences.
I feel lucky to have been able to share it with you. It was just something that happened this week. Like this is on my list of resentments, but it was an exchange that happened this week that triggered it. And
what's your experience now in saying it out loud? Was there any different experience than writing it?
Well, I feel like you shed some light on the way you said, well, that's what you think, and you're giving men power over you. I suspected that, but hearing it was like, oh yeah. And it separated me from the fact that this is true. And
I'm very appreciative that you confirmed my interjection helped you, because I was reluctant to. I didn't want to interrupt the flow or plant a seed that you hadn't come up with, but it just seemed relevant to me. So that's great. Good.
Yeah, it brought a slight separation from my feeling and the fact that it's real, because it's been real all my life.
No, your intensity certainly reveals the reality of it for you. Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Alan, any comments?
Well, look, this goes into a whole area that's so important to explore. This is where we talked about having a healthy suspiciousness.
Yeah.
Right. And what that would look like with what you just was sharing is to ask yourself, what part of my experience is being created by my projection?
Yeah.
And see, that's a very powerful question. If somebody says to me, you're dumb, and I get mad that they're saying it, am I getting mad because there's a part of me that agrees with them and I don't like seeing that? See, that is what makes us vulnerable to the opinions and attitudes of other people. Not that what they're saying per se is harmful. It's that what they say has a particular meaning to us.
Right.
And we give it that meaning. No one else is giving it that meaning.
Right.
So that's what's so important as you're going through these things. Think about that. What meaning am I giving to these experiences that makes me vulnerable to these things that are bothering me? That's one way to start unraveling this stuff, because if you were solid in yourself and you were clear about who you were, none of this stuff would mean anything. What we say is when you get to a certain point in your life and you do this work, you no longer need to prove you're a good person nor that you're a bad person. You no longer need to prove you're attractive or that you're not unattractive. This stuff becomes irrelevant because it's no longer an issue. It's not an issue. If someone likes you, well, that's fine. If they don't like you, that's fine. I mean, none of those things have anything to do with you. See, that's what you get to is a certain point in time. And then you also get to the place. So look, if somebody's not into me, then why do I want to be into somebody that's not into me? I mean, I don't want to be a member of a club that doesn't want me as a member. Why would I want to do that? See, those are the things that when we grow a healthy sense of self, we do not need other people to be a certain way for us to be okay.
That's the major, say it again, Alan, because that's the heartbeat here.
When we develop a healthy sense of self, I do not need you to feel a certain way about me. You can feel whatever way you want to feel, and I feel whatever way I feel. You can judge me, you can not like me, you can, put me down, whatever you need to do. That's you doing it. That has nothing to do with me.
I have a question though, but this, like in regards to one specific person, I get, but this is about, and I'm a woman, so this is about men, but when society is set up in a certain way that forces you
Wait. You mean there is a reality as you see it. All right. And can you change that reality?
Correct. No.
All right. So that you accept and deal with it.
That's not true. That reality has changed a lot. My God, the women's movement. Come on now.
Right.
You got to see that there has been a change, and there's been a change because people go a call into action and they do something about this, and they don't complain about it. They get out and they try to make a change. I'm talking about your personal experience. Has nothing to do with society. If you're concerned about society, get involved politically.
Yeah.
Start to form a movement. Don't sit there and complain about it, because that's not going to do anything for you. I'm talking about the personal experience you're having. That is separate from the social experience you're talking about. Do not fuse the two together, because when you do, then you make the situation for you impossible to deal with.
Exactly. And what Alan's talking about, the bottom line, I believe, is they do not have the power to name me. The only person who names me is me, and I'm fully empowered to do that. And I'm going to live in an environment where I'm independent of who they are and what they think and how they even treat me.
Right. And then this is where the vulnerability comes in, is there's a part of you, it's a little hard to get to because you got to dig a little bit, that wants to be in a relationship. But there's another part of you that is already ready for a fight before you get into the relationship.
Because
you got a lot of stuff on your hands here. But I'll tell you one thing, is that what you're setting up for yourself is not good, because what you're setting up, that you think you're going to find somehow that perfect person that you're not going to have to deal with any of this with. And I think it's the wrong beat on the drum.
Yeah.
I think the right beat is more, let me find someone that I can struggle with this stuff with, because that's more the reality. You're not going to find a perfect partner. You're not going to find anybody that's matured to that point that you're talking about. You know, the only two people I know, we're not available for those relationships anymore. No, but we're not even there either. But what I'm saying is that
but the point under what you just said, though, Alan, is that you want to be in a relationship with somebody who is curious about being better.
Yeah, that's right. That they'll struggle with you on it and talk about it and fight with you about it and say, quit fucking putting your projection on me. That's your shit. And you say, fuck you. No, I think you're an asshole. And then you continue the dialogue. I love what Tom Rutledge says, is that a good relationship is just one long discussion. One long conversation. That's how he says it, one long conversation. And to think we're going to get in a conversation without conflict and struggle, that's the fantasy, that somehow we need that to be okay, and we don't. We need to learn how, when we have a desire and it's not met with the person that we are in relationship with, that we enter into conflict and struggle and do that well, so we get to a point of resolution. That's what we need to look at, is what is involved in the conflict and struggle that makes conflict and struggle of value, that like Herb says, steel on steel. You know, how do we meet someone and create that experience where we can have that conflict and struggle, and it goes towards the betterment of both of us?
Steel on steel sharpens both sides. That's the implication of that. But
so that's what I'm saying. What's your name, Ruthie? Ruthie, that's the way I think that it might be good to shift a little bit over in this direction that I'm talking about.
And the shift is a consciousness of what you said earlier, Alan, and what you said, Ruthie, which I don't think you heard it, but Alan confirmed a healthy way of looking at it. What I see is not what is. What I see reflects who I am seeing. I'm projecting onto what is who I am. Now, that's a very sophisticated pair of lenses, because it is real consciousness. What I see is a projection of who I am, not what is. And we will never see reality as it is, because we're always looking through the lens of who we are. Yeah. That's why we need to, number one, recognize that, and number two, improve who we are, so that we see more healthy.
Well, I give a very specific, not a specific example, but an idea that corresponds to this, that's very powerful. The more I develop the capacity to enter conflict and struggle in a good way and create what we talked about is an outcome that is mutually beneficial, right? Then the less I need the women or men in my life to be perfect. The less capacity I have for that, the more dependent I am for you to be evolved. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is water seeks its own mark. I'm not going to I
She's
mean,
hearing it. She needs a scuba dive.
Well, this is why I don't date, because
well, no, you don't date because you're not embracing that. It's okay to have all this struggle. It's all right.
Now, you've built very effective walls.
Yeah, see, it's you're waiting for something perfect, and it's not going to happen, girl. You know, you're not Cinderella. The prince is not coming. He's not going to have the perfect shoe to put on your foot that's going to make everything okay. And I know that's a very sexist idea, but it also has other implications beyond sexism about how we're waiting for someone to come.
Yeah.
I see this in my life. My God, I thought that my first wife was going to solve all my unresolved problems. Damn her, she didn't do it. She just didn't. And we were two immature people that hardly knew what the hell we were doing when we got together. We loved each other, but that wasn't enough to make that work. We never had conversations like, do you want kids or not? She didn't. I did. That's an irreconcilable difference. Would have been good for us to get clear about that early on. We weren't mature enough to do that stuff.
And a lot of the story that you've just told will have more flesh on the bones when we do the fourth column.
Which we probably need to go to if we're going to get to it, Herb. We're now looking at, we've got an hour and a half almost left. We need a break.
Yeah.
Let's take maybe a 10-minute break here and come back and focus on column 4.
Let's begin again. I'm Herb, as you know, and I'm co-facilitating with Dr. Berger. I'd like to share with you the next piece of work in the big book is on page 66 and 67, a suggestion for the removal of these deep resentments. Now, they may not be deep resentments at this point, but any level of disturbance would do. It's a prayer practice. And they suggest that this resentment, this disturbance is a cancer that will metastasize over time. These are not words in the book, but it's the image that is portrayed. Number one killer, resentment. The 12 and 12 talks about disturbed. And he suggests on page 66 and 67 in the big book that we identify the deep resentments. You know who they are, probably a father, maybe a mother, maybe a sibling, maybe an ex-partner. You know who they are. I had 4 bosses on there because none of the bosses I ever had understood me. I had deep, deep, deep resentments because of the limits they imposed on me, at least in my delusional state, until I did this work. And they talk about praying, but please pay attention to page 67. I'm not going to go over a deep explanation of it. You can go to my YouTube channels for a wonderful explanation, as I understand it, what I know and what I've experienced and how I approached my resentments. Columns 1, 2, 3, 4, and this prayer practice. Go to the YouTube audio, the 2020 workshop, or the 2021 workshop, which includes video, the PowerPoints to support it, or more recently, a 45-minute overview that's on the Berlin group. Those are YouTubes now that are in playlists on my workshop. Any one of those series will be identified with a title that shows you column 3 and column 4 and or the practice for the removal of deep resentment. Now, the prayer practice that's indicated on page 67 is a prayer to remove the resentment from me. It is not, as you hear in many rooms, a prayer for them. That's a wonderful spiritual practice. I'm not commenting on that one. It's a wonderful spiritual practice to pray for them, to pray for their healing, etc. But that's not the practice that's suggested on page 67. The practice on page 67 is asking God to remove in me this disturbance, to surgically remove this cancer before it metastasizes and chokes out my spiritual life. You can go to the Way of Life document in on my website. It's a 66-page document that supports the work of the workshop, the 12-step workshop, the weekly workshop, or any workshop I do. That document has illustrations to support the unpacking of the big book suggestions, specifically for column 3, page 23. That will repeat the worksheet that has been put up here on column 3. Page 24 has a suggested prayer that comes out of the words on page 66 and 67. Or create your own prayer, because prayer is not about words, it's about your intention, which we translate into words. And then page 25 in that Way of Life document has the column 4 as is illustrated here, although these worksheets that Rainey is putting up are better than the worksheets in the Way of Life document because they're more spacious, the ones that Rainey is putting up. So we begin the prayer practice praying on a daily basis for the removal of the deep resentment. It was 3 months that I prayed 8 deep resentments, 8 prayers. I'm not suggesting that you do it all at once like I did on a daily basis. You figure out your own pattern. Some people do 1 a day, some people do 3 a day. I happen to, because I didn't know any better, prayed a prayer specifically for the removal of each 8 deep resentments, 8 deep resentments, 8 prayers. Well, after 3 months of daily prayer, 1 of them had been removed. There was no negative valence. And I continued to pray for the removal. Whether you believe in prayer or not, whether you believe in God or not, it's just irrelevant. I do believe that prayer doesn't change God, it changes the prayer, because it shows willingness to be changed. It shows willingness to be open in your mind and your heart. It's a cry for help to the universe. And I do believe, I don't want to be too new agey, but I do believe something responds. At the very least, it's good psychology. And the process, my experience after several months, removed them all. And the really good news is none of them ever came back. So if you want to have freedom from your disturbances or deep resentments or not so deep, I recommend the prayer practice. How free do you want to be and how soon? Column 4. Well, there's no column 4. No, literally, as I mentioned in my opening comments, there's no column 4 on page 65. There's only 3, and they're not even entitled columns, but they are there in a matrix of 3 columns. As I mentioned, column 3 just has a series of words. No explanation, no suggestion how to use them. Well, the same comment I'll make now about what we call column 4 is the second paragraph on page 67 in the big book, which just talks about my role. Alan talked about it earlier, the motivation being self-centered. There's 5 questions there. We put them into column 4 just to connect it to the prior work that we've done in columns 1, 2, and 3. Column 4 is about my role, my self-centered thinking when I have a resentment, my self-centered doing when I have a resentment, my self-centered fear when I have a resentment, my self-centered dishonesty where I have a resentment, my self-centered motive, which is my responsibility. I am self-centered in a variety of dimensions that are expressed in my thinking, in my behavior, in my emotions, in my hiding. And ultimately, it's the turnaround. That's a phrase that's used by Byron Katie. She doesn't come at it from a psychological standpoint or a spiritual standpoint or a 12-step standpoint. It's her own experience. And she calls that process of change that happens when we ask the right questions and are honest with ourselves. She calls it the turnaround. I've mentioned to you the perceived role at the end of the column 3 is usually some form of victim. And the actual role, the realization at the end of the column 4 exercise, is the realization of my contribution to holding this reaction, this resentment, this disturbance. I don't have a part. You hear it all the time, and I understand the spirit of it. But the words are not in the big book, and the words are not accurate. We don't have a part in our resentments and in our disturbance. We don't have a part. My role is 100%. In this play of my life, I am 100% responsible for my reaction. I'm not responsible for circumstances. I'm not responsible for people's behavior. There's a huge distinction. I'm responsible for my perception and reaction to circumstances and behavior. So this is column 4. And it's just a series of questions. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's not a test. We embrace the set-aside attitude right at the top. Oh, Holy Spirit, Spirit of the universe, whatever energy is out there that is going to be helpful, please open my heart and open my mind so that I see the truth. When I resented Bob for trying to get me fired, all right, that was my column 3. 20 years in this business, 4 years sober. He didn't understand that I was sober because he didn't see any change. I had not changed. I was just not drinking. But my behavior was still that narcissistic behavior that I referred to earlier. But I didn't know that I didn't know. I was still having very negative impact on the people in my environment. I had this belief coming out of column 3 that I'm a persecuted employee. No, really, seriously, I thought they had all ganged up on me because there was a posse out to throw me out. And it's true. I actually ended up finishing the 12-step work, seeing my role, and also recognizing that I'm not going to change my environment. So I had to change to a new environment. And I spent the next 20 years in a new, very productive environment. They had no history of me. And I was able to be the new person in that new environment and be quite successful. So the question I ask is about my behavior. It's the easiest thing to look at. When I'm resentful at Bob, how do I behave? Well, I talk negatively about him. I misrepresent myself to my bosses. I'm not the person they think I am and I've portrayed myself as. I'm not educated in the area of managing business. I'm a good salesman, but I know nothing really about managing business. I want the power and the prestige and money that goes with this promotion. Selfish. How am I thinking about myself? Well, it's all about me. I wanted the promotion not to help the employees further their career, not to help the stockholders have a better, not to help the company have better results. No, no, no. I wanted the power, the prestige, the money, etc., that went with it. It was all about me. It was never about them. People were furniture in my life. I brought them in if they were useful. I threw them away if they weren't, without any thought or feeling about it. Now, I'm not proud of that, but I am explaining that was 1988, 1989. 4 years sober, clueless about change. And I have to ask myself, where am I dishonest? Well, as I said, I'm misrepresenting myself, even to my friends, let alone my colleagues. I know underneath that I'm insecure. I know underneath that I'm glib, but not necessarily informed. I have covered up my fear of being discovered. So number 4, I have a fear of being fired or not getting the job, as I indicated. Those things were revealed to me in the fear annotation in the 3rd column. It began to pull the curtain back, and I didn't know at that point, up until that point, that I had any fears. But I began to see that I had lots of fears because I had lots of insecurities, and I began to actually understand my low self-esteem. Now I am being a little psychological there. It was very helpful to be in therapy at that time as I'm doing this work with a step guide and having, in a spiritual process, things revealed to me. But it was wonderful to be in a therapeutic process to have it confirmed in the context of science and a human informed, experienced person who could help lead me along the path of discovery. The most important question is number 5. Where am I wrong? This is from the big book. At fault, to blame, responsible. These are words that really could be summarized. What is my role for my feelings and behavior? So asking the question, when I feel this resentment of persecution, all right, where does it come from? My current reaction to this perceived event is to protect my ambition, which I've already said is totally self-centered ambition, has nothing to do with helping anybody other than me. When we get to the 8th step in the big book, it suggests that we make a list of the people harmed. We did so when we took inventory. So in anticipation of that, I've added the harms done to that person that I have the resentment for, number 6, and harms done to other people like collateral damage, just as a parking spot, so that when I get to step 8, I can come back here and be reminded to unpack it in more detail. In this area, it's just really a parking spot, a word or a phrase that allows me then to move forward here, but not get bogged down in getting too specific with regard to the harms done. Number 8 is to just see if there's any additional fears that I'm experiencing that flow over from the answer to number 4 and or the experiences I had in column 3. Are there? Yes, I saw that I was afraid of tall, powerful men. I had not known that reflectively. I did not know that. My father was 6'4", verbally and emotionally abusive. And I had dealt with that and I had rage about that, but I had never seen that then translates. You talk about the trauma going forward. Here I am 48 years old and my father was 12 years dead, and I've had lots of therapy around it, but I've never recognized that it translated into this fear of other tall, powerful men. But I also saw that I was afraid of good-looking, articulate, smart women who would confront me because I was afraid of being publicly humiliated or even personally humiliated, and I did not know that. Part of an explanation for the drinking I did in social settings, not an excuse, but certainly an explanation. I found also, to help me own it, looking at my character defects, which again is a parking spot, not a place to spend much time in analysis, but a parking spot to identify the unhealthy coping strategies, as Dr. Berger calls it, or the default habits that we have that are unhealthy as a mechanism for safety and survival. The big book talks about character defects in step 9, shortcomings. I meant in step 6 and 7. And so I add them here to the question number 9, so that I again can see, oh, grandiosity, dishonesty, calloused self-centeredness. And I began to also see the various characteristics of the narcissist as the DSM revealed it to me, which all then shows me that this source of these resentments, these feelings, these unhealthy reactions is in me. To name it, not to blame me, but to name it so that I can be clear as to the source. It's never outside of me. Please hear that. My reactions, never the result of anything outside of me. Circumstances and people cannot make me angry. Circumstances and people are just what they do, and I take it personally and I react. My reaction is the source of my problems, not circumstances and events. Why do I hold on to this resentment toward Bob? Well, because he's easy to blame. And when I have to look at him, when I see him as the source of my problems, I'm not looking at myself. My motive and the benefit and the value to me are that I don't have to take responsibility. And my real role now in holding on to these negative feelings, I'm down at the bottom of the worksheet, is usually the direct opposite of the role above. I said, I was a persecuted employee. The real truth is, I was a grandiose, self-serving person, delusional. It was embarrassing. Column 3 was embarrassing. Column 4 was more embarrassing. I told you, I thought I was a Renaissance man. And the truth is, I was a Neanderthal. I was so not evolved, despite my background. And yet that very recognition, that very acceptance, Bill talks about it in chapter 7 in the 12 and 12, humility. The humiliation of the truth, which brought me to, in fact, the acceptance, which allowed me then to change the source of the reactions that I was having. I wanted to be better and I wanted to do better. Because I really always wanted to be a decent human being. I never just translated that into being one. All right. Alan, you have any comments about the column 4 and or anything that I shared?
Oh, hold on. There we go. No, I don't. I think it was a great explanation, and it's such an important part of this inventory. You know, one of the things that I've been talking about in regards to emotional sobriety is how emotional sobriety parallels the process of differentiation. And just for those of you that don't know about it, differentiation is the degree to which we're clear about who we are, what's important to us, you know, how we function, those kinds of things. So it's comprised of differentiation of self and also differentiation of others, knowing we're different from other people and being aware of those differences. But in regards to the 4th step, Bill said that if we practice these principles of the 12 steps in our daily lives, that we and those about us begin to discover emotional sobriety. Well, what we're doing here in terms of building, the possibility of emotional sobriety in our life is being aware of who we are and what's going on with us. And probably for the first time in our life, being rigorously honest about these processes. And it's not an easy thing to do. And, Herb and I remind people all the time, only the best in you can see the worst in you.
Right. That's such a great phrase. Please, again.
It's just only the best in you can see the worst in you. So when you're looking at this stuff and you see some things that are hard to look at, pat yourself on the back. That's your recovery at its best. And you keep doing that and you will realize the promises and the promise of emotional sobriety.
But keep in mind, it is a process. And we're capturing today's conversation as if it might be like an event. Well, it's not. This process took me probably 2 or 3 months to go through the first time. And then the second time I went through the steps was 3 years later. And the third time I went through the steps was 3 years later. And so it was over about a 10-year period, seeing broader and seeing deeper into this change that takes place in our consciousness, to stay with the theme that we started with. I hope, and I forgot to mention that I wanted you to fill out your own worksheet or make notes about your own column 3, column 4 relationship as I was going through the column 4, explaining my own understanding and my own dynamics, my own experience with each of the questions. And I hope you did some work yourself on your resentments. Maybe you'd done the 3rd column or parts of it, and now looking at, so what's your role and responsibility, and what did you write, and what was your experience? Raise your hands if there is something that you would like to ask or comment on in the 4th column. We'll get back to the 3rd column. If you want to ask about the prayer practice, that's fine too, but I want to focus on the 4th column. If you have some comments, questions, resistances, disagreements, mostly about experience.
I was just going to go through my 4th column. Is that okay?
Right. No, it's wonderful. That's exactly what I was inviting. But let me to show you, because you're the first out of the gate, what I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear from your 3rd column, if you did that, your 3rd column, what your resentment is and what your self-esteem and fear is.
The 3rd column?
Please.
I don't know if I did it right. So
Well, of course you don't, but we'll find out.
I'm not insecure. Okay, I just want to share that. Okay. This
I'm
is
glad
about,
you told me.
what'd you say?
I'm glad you told me.
Yeah, just so you know, because I don't know that either. All right, this is about a coworker who used to be practice managers together, and then they changed some stuff around, and my practice went to another practice, and so I went under Joanne, this lady Joanne. So I went under her.
And
But
what's resentment?
Resentment was that she humiliated me in front of people. She made me feel stupid and lazy and not capable. When in reality, when I was working with her as an equal, we were fine.
Yeah.
But then it just turned.
She had a little bit of power and it went to her head, and you resented that.
I resented it, and I was so afraid I was going to lose my job.
There you go. And what's your self-esteem here in the 3rd column? Number 1.
My self-esteem. Okay. Not doing a good job. And I needed to learn to work in this different kind of office, and I was out of control. So,
okay. So that's not self-esteem. That's a self-evaluation. I want to know what you believe. So what did you write for? This is a perfect example now. The next item was pride. How do you want other people to see this person treating you?
And they did see it. What I said, wait a minute, say it again.
What would be the ideal way that you would want other people to see her treating you? What would be the ideal from your standpoint of her positive treatment of you? How would she see and treat you in the ideal world?
Oh, well, that she was a good.
No, not she, you.
Oh,
She sees you as.
when I put down that she saw me, or they saw me as being stupid and not capable.
No, that's not true. If in fact you felt stupid and you wanted them to see you as stupid, you would have loved your new supervisor.
Oh, no, I wanted them to see that I was capable.
There you go.
Okay, got it. And that I wasn't stupid and that I was working very hard.
And that I'm quite competent.
Right.
Yes, okay. So what's your fear in both the self-esteem and pride?
All of it was losing my job.
Got it.
My whole fear.
Yeah, got it.
All the way down. It was
100%. I got it. 100%.
Yes.
So now
Okay.
move over to the fourth column. What's your perceived role?
My perceived role,
Yeah.
like
come out of it. Go ahead.
like I was acting, I was behaving like I knew what I was doing. And
No, your perceived role is a mistreated subordinate.
oh, okay.
Right?
But I was betrayed. I said betrayed.
That's a pretty big word. Really?
And,
Betrayed?
to
Wait,
me-
wait. Betrayed? I'm a word guy. Betrayed, really?
Yeah,
Your supervisor, how did she betray you?
by talking behind me.
Does that
Yeah.
betray you? I mean, you need to look that word up.
All right.
No, sort of abused employee maybe, or misunderstood employee.
Humiliated me.
Humiliated
That's what I-
employee.
All right. And what I wrote down was humiliating me in front of other coworkers.
There you go. That's it. Very accurate. And when you feel humiliated, number one, how do you behave? Self-seeking.
I was behaving like I knew what I was doing.
No. You got to hear the words now. You said I talk shit to other people, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you were gossiping about her. That's your behavior. When you feel humiliated, you strike out, you retaliate.
Well, actually, I was in fear and I cried a lot.
There you go. That's a behavior. I cried a lot.
I cried a lot.
Wonderful. Number two, what unhealthy thinking created this resentment?
Not believing that I could, not even believing what was being said about me and not being brave enough to come against it.
There you go. Nice. Excellent. Great insight. And where are you dishonest in this reaction of resentment?
I was pretending. And I was totally insecure, but I was pretending like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I was coming in early and leaving late and just trying my best, but it wasn't working. So I was really pretending. I wasn't being honest.
With yourself, let alone
with myself.
Right. Number four, afraid.
Losing my job. Yes. Terrified because I was by myself. I'm by myself. I don't have any family there. Right. I don't have any support system.
Right. There you go. Number five. What is your role and responsibility in creating this resentment in the present moment?
Ignorance and people pleasing I put down.
All right.
Trying to keep my job.
All right. Not standing up for myself. Yeah. All right. Skip 6 and 7 and go to number 8. Are there any additional fears? Losing your job?
Not being able to financially survive.
Yeah. All right. Number 9, what about character defects or shortcomings?
Okay. Are you ready? Pride, anger, negative thinking, defensive, fear, judgment towards Joanne.
Oh, that was the name of the person?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That's a good start. And again, it's a parking, it's a parking spot.
I can leave now.
Probably not. But anyway, once you get to step 6, you'll unpack even those and then perhaps see other little shadows that are blocking the light. That's the whole point of it.
Okay.
You see, we in step 2 and 3, we made a decision that there is a light deep down inside of ourselves. But here we are identifying the clouds that block the light from us. All right, number 10. So what's this all about? What's your motive or benefit or value for holding this resentment? What did you write?
I don't have a 10. Oh,
Okay.
oh, you know what? I'm working from another page. Okay. Why do I hold on to this? I think it's, like, just like self-satisfaction that I don't like this lady, that I really hate her. I think it's just like I have a right.
Yeah.
I feel like I have, boy, that's an ego. Up on the top, I went pride and ego. So I guess my ego is coming out. And, like, and I think it's my ego that even, and I had to do an amends on a writing. I didn't call her, but every time I saw her on Facebook, it was like this.
Right. Well, there's
like I want to throw up.
There's a process that ends with the 9th step, but the process begins here in column 3 and 4, the process of forgiveness, where you release her.
I have to forgive her. I do.
But you don't have to. You don't have to. You can drink the poison.
No, I have enough poison. I have poison in different flavors.
Oh, there you go. So your real role and your realization, did you write that? Rather than the persecuted employee or the mistreated employee, what's the truth here?
That is my pride. The real truth is that I wasn't strong enough to stand up against her.
I wasn't courageous enough. To recognize reality and accept reality. She's my supervisor.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no right or wrong answer. There's just an experience that might be available to each of us as we do this.
She put me sometimes in a wrong place because I had to lie to her, for her and stuff too. So
I had to lie for her. Hear that? Oh my, are you such a victim?
Because, she started having her own breakdown and I ended up having to do her timesheet and stuff saying that she was there and that she really wasn't there.
I mean, you're blaming her for your dishonesty.
Yeah, I'm just honest. I'm a liar.
Well, maybe it's deeper than that, but those are things you'll explore. Yeah. Alan, you have any comments?
Well, I think you captured it. See, Judy, one of the things that gets you so stuck is believing that other people make you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
She humiliated me. She did this to me. She did that to me.
And I believed.
You felt humiliated, but you felt humiliated. There was something you did with what was going on that humiliated you. See, that's how you're going to be able to unpack this thing, is to see what you're doing, not what she's done, but what you're doing, what you did, or what part of you agreed with her that made you feel bad about yourself.
I also, because I thought that she was right.
Yeah, well, there's the real problem. See, that's the issue. And see, that's the stuff that didn't get as revealed in this, exploration as I would like it. See, I think you're going to get a lot more out of looking at that, how you agreed with her. And because you agreed with her, then it wasn't a matter of courage in terms of standing up for yourself. You didn't have nothing you couldn't stand up for yourself when you didn't believe in yourself.
Right.
So there's no ability to stand up for yourself if you don't feel good about what's going on.
Right. I believe what people say about me.
Well, that's a serious problem. But see, that's what you need to continue to focus on, right? Is what you're doing, not what everybody else is doing, but what you're doing. That makes you vulnerable to this stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I have one very resistant resentment. So I was hoping to go through that with you all.
Did you do a column 3 on it?
I did.
Did you read the resentment and the self-esteem and fear?
Okay. So I resent my ex-husband for betraying me, belittling me, ignoring me, and leaving me and making me out to be the one who left him to the kids.
Right. And who are you? Self-esteem.
I'm a respectable, hardworking, honest, kind, responsible woman and mother.
Excellent. Nice and robust. Excellent. Good technicolor there. All right. And what's your fear?
That he might be right about me, that I am not a good person or mother and wasn't a good wife.
It's great that you have an open mind and heart to kind of like explore it. That's great. Now move over to the 4th column. What's your perceived role?
My perceived role is that I'm a betrayed wife and emotionally abused spouse.
Emotionally abused spouse. I got it. Yeah. And in that context, betrayed might be, in fact, an accurate word. It sounds abandoned also. Yeah. And when you feel this betrayal, what you wrote, how do you behave, number 1?
I retreat from all men, and because I feel like they probably aren't trustworthy, and wonder if he's right when he told me that I couldn't make it on my own.
Yeah, I generalize and I hide.
That's right.
Yeah. And so number 2 is about selfish. It's about the unhealthy thinking that develops this resentment.
That I can't be generous with others, or I won't have enough for myself, and that it's not safe to open up to most people, especially men.
So the unhealthy thinking underneath that is what?
That I can't trust most people.
Who are you not trusting here?
Probably mostly myself.
Yes. That's what I saw. Yeah, it just permeated the whole conversation there. Yes. Yeah, the unhealthy thing is I really don't trust that I'm capable. Yeah. Number 3, dishonest.
That I stayed married to him mostly because I was receiving financial support, and that I turned to 2 other men in our marriage for some emotional support, and I belittled him and made fun of him to friends.
Okay, all right, we'll just stay with that. Number 4, what are you afraid of?
Not having financial security and enough money to live on as I age, because I didn't get his retirement when we got divorced.
Yeah.
Also that I'm hurt too badly emotionally to trust other men and will always be alone.
Yeah. Again, not being capable, right? Yeah, that's your fear. Yeah. Damaged goods. 5, where are you responsible for this resentment, for feeling this resentment?
But I shut down emotionally in the relationship long before our marriage ended, but stayed for financial security and fear of being a single woman and mother.
But what about the resentment? Yes, that's all true in the story, but what about the generation of this resentment? Maybe what did you write for number 10, the value or the benefit?
That I don't have to honestly and thoroughly admit my part. Also in the hope that he'll admit his wrongdoings and give me vindication.
Yeah, yeah. All right, all right. No right or wrong answer. There's just these indications of things that you might want to explore. All right. Skip 6 and 7. What did you write? Is there any additional fears? Number 8.
That I've caused harm to our children, that I used him for emotional and financial security, that I'm more to blame than I want to admit.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. And blame, I don't like the word blame. I think it's a judgmental, negative, but responsible. I like that word. Yep.
Okay.
I am absolutely more responsible than I care to admit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other, if I can, addendum.
Yep.
That I'm incapable of a healthy relationship with anyone, especially a man.
That's the unhealthy thinking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, whether or not you think it's true, the fact that you think it, that's an unhealthy thought, right? Well, do you see that? I hope I'm not just putting thoughts in your head.
You know, I have to tell you, I have been in Al-Anon for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I have done many 4th steps, but what was so revealing to me around doing it this way and with your worksheets is really looking at my own belief systems.
Yes.
That have come from the resentments. And mostly I don't hold resentments towards these other people too robustly. I feel like I've let a lot of those go. What I haven't looked thoroughly at is the beliefs that are still affecting me.
Yes, yes. That's one of the major outcomes of doing this work this way, is that we identify the lenses through which we look so that we can regrind the lenses and have a clearer look at reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so at the top, you said betrayed spouse. What's your realization at the bottom? Did you write any new words there?
I did, that I'm still holding on to this resentment because my hope is if I really need help, he'll be there for me because he owes me.
Yeah.
Hurting me so badly.
How long have you been separated?
30 years.
Has he ever stepped up to help you in 30 years?
No.
And you hope that he will now?
That was a bit of a surprise when I wrote it.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. It's more a fantasy than a hope, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And also that it keeps me from completely admitting my part to myself and to our children.
Well, there you go. That's probably the major outcome of this realization, is that, I've been dishonest with myself and my kids, which is probably very impactful. Yeah. So as you wrote it out and now as you read it out, we've discussed it. What's your experience with it?
I feel like I deserve the badge of courage.
For doing this work? Absolutely. Yes.
For doing it with you guys today.
I agree 100%. Yeah. I mean, doing it with one of us is bad enough, but 2 of us, oh my goodness, a badge of courage. But other than that, what's your experience personally in terms of either feelings or thoughts?
I feel like I'm being much more honest with myself than I have ever been willing to be.
I'm hearing it. It's yeah. And this work ripens as we embrace it.
John Amodeo has written, I think, one of the best books on love and betrayal, and that's the title of the book, Love and Betrayal. His last name is Amodeo, Amodeo. And he writes in there, and I think he's right on when he says this. He says, no betrayal in our life can occur unless we first betray ourselves.
Wow.
Okay. No betrayal can occur unless we first. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, in terms of fidelity, let's say in a marriage, is that we all think that somehow marital vows are some guarantee that the marriage is going to remain faithful. And it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, the most fragile bond that exists is the bond between two people that are in love with each other. The romantic bond of all bonds is the most fragile. You know, mother to daughter or son, or father to daughter or son. That's a pretty robust bond. I mean, it takes a lot to fray that thing. But husband and wife, man, if you are not taking care of that, if you're not staying top, and taking care of it doesn't mean meeting your partner's needs, but attending to the kind of connection or process that is going on between the two of you. And if you think that somehow you're just gonna, you know, magically stay together, it's a self-betrayal. That's a self-betrayal. That's buying fantasies and bringing fantasies into reality, thinking that the fantasy is the reality. That's a betrayal. Whenever I buy a fantasy as though it's a reality, I'm betraying myself, because I'm not operating in what? Reality. You know, what we talk about is being aligned with reality. If I'm aligned with reality and I enter a relationship, I know that it's a fragile bond. And the only way that it's going to continue to be good is if it's good for both of us. And we pay attention to how we're talking to each other, work with it, address issues that come up when they do. I mean, that's what a healthy, lively, I called it a long conversation looks like when you're with someone. So just from that part, let alone that, you know, when I talk to supposedly the trusting partner and then the other person, you are not a trusting person if you're trusting someone who's untrustworthy. See, you got to understand that. And the only way to trust someone that's worthy of trust is someone who's keeping their integrity. Yeah. I hate to insert a lot of reality, but that's rare. I mean, it's rare. It's a rare thing. Herb and I work really hard at keeping our integrity. Right. You know, we pull it off about 90% of the time. Far from perfect. Yeah. And yet, you know, you take a young couple together, and first of all, they don't even know who they are yet, and they're trying to put together a relationship. I mean, all these expectations we have are so unreasonable and outrageous, and they set us up for this self-betrayal because I believe in something that is not going to be true. You know, I love when Herb and I had this discussion and we started to talk about, you know, laws, physical laws. You violate a physical law, well, it's not a punishment. Things happen. There's a certain consequence that goes on. Like Herb says, you jump off a building, I don't care how hard you flap your wings or your arms and you put even wings on it, you're going to crash, you're going to break your legs, or you're going to die, depending on how tall of a building you jump off of. Well, there's psychological and spiritual laws that are very similar to those. Right. And if you know, embrace a fantasy and try to use that to live your life with, it won't work. It's jumping off a building and flapping your arms. It's no different. None. And yet, you and I, we do it all the time. We jump off a lot of buildings and we crash, and then we blame the other person, right? Because if only they would have been different, we could have had a great relationship. Boy, that song has been sung over and over and over again. And, you know, it's starting to sound out of tune. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think that this whole thing of being betrayed, you know, it's once again becoming a victim. And part of what we do in recovery is we move from victim to empowerment. And we just start to see, my God, I set myself up for some of this stuff, not because I'm a bad person. Now, please understand that our naivete, our emotional dependency, our ignorance, that doesn't make us bad. It just makes us immature, ignorant. That's all. Right. It's okay. That's not a crime. That's a condition that in our society is pretty normal. What's normal is our society is immaturity. Yeah. Now you got to hear what I just said. That's the baseline. You're not going to find someone who's got it all of their shit together and has evolved. You know, those folks are there, but they're rare and they're few and far between. The rest of us are down here in the trenches trying to figure this out. and doing the best we can with what we have, and it's never enough. And some of us have thankfully and humbly found this other way that's given us some more information, which is wonderful. But that's the way I'm thinking about these things today. And I think it's very important for us to hold that kind of space, because that moves us now into, where was I naive? Where was I misinformed? What part of this had to do with my fantasies? What part of this had to do with my own immaturity? See, instead of looking at the other person, and then we can get on with the business. I love what Tom Rutledge says, my other companion that I'm traveling this emotional sobriety road with. He goes, it's very important to go in the past and learn as much as we can from it, and then get the hell out of there. Get the hell out of there. Don't stay in the past. So you've not been married for 30 years. Listen to what you just said. You're still holding on to the fantasy that somehow, because he knows you suffered terribly, that he's going to somehow now, take care of you. God, is that a Judeo-Christian thing or not? If I suffer enough, then I will go through the gates of heaven. I mean, maybe not. Maybe you got to take yourself through the gates of heaven. Maybe he's not coming. See, and that's what I would just say to you specifically. That's another fantasy. If you go back and look at all the things you said, I would love for you to mark up what you said and say, what was reality and what was fantasy? There was a lot of fantasy in what you just talked about.
Yeah. Beyond hope. It was not real. It wasn't reality based.
I was thinking, could it be that the person's afraid of intimacy?
Oh, sure.
And they put up this smoke screen to just stop it from ever happening.
Yeah.
And there was something else, but that we're more, that's because we have this idea that we're so sensitive and we're going to get hurt, but that we're much more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, but we don't know that necessarily until we do some work. And a whole bunch of what we heard today, and underneath what we didn't hear, is a sense of lack of self-worth, a lack of safety on our terms, that we don't feel like we're enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I almost got the feeling like they actually wanted so much connection that it scared them, and they had to stop it to some sense of protecting themselves, because it would feel like they could get so hurt.
One of the things I've seemed to have learned with working with Dr. Berger, especially over with this emotional sobriety, is at the bottom line, under the bottom line is we want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to be safe. Then we want to survive. But it's about feeling safe. And everything comes from some distortion that we're not safe. Or maybe it's true, but mostly it's a distortion of some reality based on what Dr. Berger talked about in terms of either trauma or family of origin experiences. Yeah. And so it's very worthwhile exploring is, do I want intimacy? Am I capable of having it? Is it something that I'm going to foster? And you got to be pretty safe within yourself in order to take the risk. Yeah. Dr. Berger mentioned about trust. And my wife had said, because I asked her in part of the men's process, when will you trust me again? And she said, trust is not given her, it's earned. I said, okay, how do I earn it? She said, with consistent behavior. Whew. Tough Irish broad from the south side of Chicago. Yeah.
When I was reading in the big book, they were talking about the mind and the body.
Yeah.
And both of them are unique, but then they come together. They're both single and then they come together. And I just wanted to know how do the mind and the body work so that they're working unitedly? Does that make sense?
Yes, no. Integration is the key here for that maturity that Dr. Berger was talking about. Well, what is it that you mean by mind?
My thinking,
Yes, that's what I mean by the mind. Yes. What do you mean
my thinking.
What do you mean by the body?
My reaction to physical, like food,
Yeah.
like
my feelings
thinking,
and my reaction. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My thinking, it's my thinking that gets me into the food. And then I break my abstinence.
Maybe it is and maybe it isn't, depending on what you mean by thinking. See, Bill calls it obsession.
My obsession with
and
that
comes from the mind, but it's not necessarily your thinking. It's more the compulsion of your awareness.
And just my willingness to just do whatever the hell I want. I mean, I don't eat sugar or flour.
So you call that willfulness, not will.
Willfulness. My spoiled brat person inside of me.
There you go, 4-year-old.
Yeah, it's right there. And she is just very willful.
Rather than, yes, and I don't mean any negative implication to what I just said about that.
No, I didn't get it.
It's really at the subliminal level. We're not Bill says we're powerless over that obsession.
How do we get not powerless?
We finished the 9th step.
So there is hope.
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it? That's why the promises are there at the end of the 9th step. And after the promises, Bill says we enter into the world of the spirit and we are placed in a position of neutrality. Read the language. I'm quoting.
I know. I mean, I've read that, but I'm not there.
Well, okay. So have you finished your 9th step?
No, I'm not even on step 1 yet.
Oh, well, look at that.
I'm doing.
You're on step 0.
I'm up to everybody. I'm doing the appendix 2, and I'm working with you on the 12
Appendix
steps.
2. Appendix 2 is a description of hope.
Okay.
Isn't it? That's why I start there.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
It's the purpose. It's the mission. I'm going to become awake.
Okay.
Now, it's not going to be happening by tomorrow. It's a dimmer switch, not a light switch.
I'm 73.
You got plenty of time. I'm 82.
Okay.
Well, wait. What can you do about 72?
Nothing.
Oh, you passed that one. You passed that signal. So you can't do anything. What can you do about 74?
Nothing.
No,
I have to be in the present. That's what it says.
There you go. Yeah, deal with right now. And if you die tomorrow, you will have at least had today.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
I want to believe in the best in people. And I had an expectation that we could all be a family again. And it was rough. It was rough because reality.
Wait. What was rough?
Facing the fact that my expectation was unrealistic.
Oh, but it sounds like you faced it.
I did.
So what's the problem?
The problem is connectivity.
What kind of connectivity?
That's the problem.
No, what's the problem?
I have backed off the relationship entirely because I feel physically threatened by the relationship.
Well, why do you want a relationship?
He's my brother.
Is a relationship available?
I've tried, but it does not.
No. Is a relationship available?
No.
All right. So you want him to change?
Yeah.
I
want him to be recovered.
Yeah, there you go. And so I hope you're laughing because you see how naive that is.
Huh?
How naive that is.
Yes.
There you go.
But the depth of my naivete shocked me, to be honest with you. After years, years and years of work, I was like, "There you are again. You're back."
Yep.
believing that, this is going to happen. You're in Disneyland. This appears never to be able to happen. And just you have to let go of all expectations of that.
Well, you want to. You want to let go of the expectations. You want to release him. You want to release yourself, and you want to deal in reality because you want serenity.
And I'm also angry. I'm angry for what could be or what could have been, and that can't be. And that.
So you're angry. You're angry because your fantasy wasn't realized.
Yes.
Oh, now do you hear me?
Yes.
Fantasy.
Yes.
It was never going to be real. So at what point do you release yourself from your fantasy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, it's tough. You can divorce a husband, but you can't divorce your family.
You absolutely can.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. Doing amends and finishing the process doesn't mean you establish a relationship. You don't want a relationship right now with a sick man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard to hear, but it's the truth.
Well, sometimes it is hard to hear the truth. Yeah. But it's non-negotiable and it's immutable reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Holy Spirit, consider when I resent men or Alan, whoever it is I'm talking about, for thinking less of me because I'm a woman. My perceived role when feeling this resentment, I'm a disregarded, underestimated woman.
Yes.
Did this happen? No, it's false. Seeking.
Well, the feelings, I want to share this for other people. The question is really a critical question. Did the event happen? I found 5% of my resentments were not based on actual events.
Yeah.
They were somehow, I don't know exactly where they came from, but it never really happened. But so the feelings of resentment are true, but the basis for it are not true. In your case, you're saying the basis for your resentment is not true.
Right.
Yeah, all right. Excellent. Thank you for that opportunity. So when you feel this feeling of disrespect, denigration, how do you behave, number one?
So typically I'm short, sarcastic, combative, defensive, challenging, and I try to make him, whoever he is, look dumb. Feel or look dumb.
Yeah, on a good day.
Yeah. I get my vitamins.
Number two, so where are you selfish? You're unhealthy thinking underneath this.
I'll show you, buddy. I'm going to make him think twice before he ever does this again to me or other women.
I'm going to be competitive and be one up all the time. All right. Number three, dishonest.
I'm a victim waiting to happen. Taking
how is that dishonest for you?
Because it's coming from I'm imposing a position.
That's great. That's great. Yes, yes. I'm imposing my reality on reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful insight. Excellent. Number four, fear.
And the other dishonesty is taking his behavior personally and believing all men are the same.
Well, but those are two different things. That's right. Exactly. You took the individual personally, but you have this generalization of black and white. No, excellent insights. Number four, fear. Excuse me.
Is a man will have dominance over me again and confirm his superiority.
Mm-hmm. And number five, what about your role and responsibility?
Then I was reading into his tone to confirm my belief.
Oh, that's huge. By the way, that's a great insight. All right. I have a preconceived idea, and so I'm going to read everything to confirm my preconceived idea. It's warping reality. All right.
Yeah, because I don't feel that way. All men, some men, I don't hear the tone. So I'm like, oh, he's safe.
Yeah,
and
for a minute. Yeah, totally slip off the edge, right? So at the present time, current,
Exactly. And now I'm choosing to believe that my projection was true.
Okay, so you're seeing it as a projection of something that isn't true.
I'm just now it's like, no, that's exactly what he did. Even though, yeah, just what I'm now,
but the point of this question is to diffuse your resentment. I have currently a resentment.
projection.
And so seeing it unhealthy is it's a projection of non-reality.
Yes, that I'm choosing to believe non-reality.
And not necessarily consciously, it's your, again, default reaction, habitual way of protecting yourself.
Yes.
All right.
That's what I'm doing now.
All right, let's skip 6 and 7 and go to number 8. Are there any other fears?
Other fears, yes. Men are unsafe. I'm using an axe instead of an X-Acto knife. I'm blind to good or bad men.
First of all, I love the image. I'm using an axe rather than an X-Acto knife. That's so wonderful. That's great subtlety. So go ahead.
I'm petrified of abandoning myself, and I'm also afraid I'm wrong.
Okay. All right. All right. So you overcompensate for the possibility of being wrong by being strong in your reaction. All right. Excellent. Number 9, your character defects or shortcomings.
Black and white thinking.
Yeah.
Insecurity, perfectionism, control, and unforgiveness. Okay.
All right. All right. And you'll look more deeply at those when you get there in 6 and 7. What did you write for number 10? The benefit or value of holding this resentment.
A man will never hurt me.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Because they can't get that close. Right. Right. And so what did you say is your perceived role at the top?
A disregarded, underestimated woman.
And what's the truth at the bottom? My realization.
I realize I'm a fearful woman who is spending a lot of time and energy punishing and preventing herself from being hurt by men.
Yeah. Yeah. Punishing and defending. Yeah. All right. So as you wrote it out and now as you read it out, especially in light of your experience with the third column, what's your overall experience with this work?
I say this all the time to friends and they were like, but not all men are like that. And I was like, but no, like intellectually I can understand,
right? But
a complete refusal. And with this, it's like just a little opening.
Okay.
Just a slight opening.
All right. Well, that's what Bill says. A willingness to have the door open just a crack lets the light in.
Yeah, that's about it. Just a crack.
Hey, it's enough. It's enough. What we do is good enough to then allow it to build. That's right. Alan, you have comments?
Well, I wanted to read something that I was just reading the other day that I think is apropos. Otto Rank was one of Freud's disciples. So Freud had in his inner circle, he had Otto Rank, Alfred Adler, Wilhelm Reich, and Carl Jung. God, what a group, huh?
Wow.
I'd love to sit at a dinner party when those guys were talking, right?
That's the A team, right?
I know, it's really the A team. And Otto Rank was brilliant in his own right. I mean, all these guys were. They all made incredible contributions. Oh, there was one other guy, Ferenczi, which he's often not recognized, but he was also part of it. But this is what Rank said. He goes, in every more intimate human relation, so he's talking about our romantic relationships, the punishing element is set up in the other spontaneously and unavoidedly. And this is what makes the relationship, as a rule, so hard to understand and so impossible to bear. So we'll say, I'll translate into.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, well, it's psychoanalytic writing. So it's a little, it always takes me a few minutes to try to go, okay, I think this is what they're meaning. And this is what it means. See, every one of us has a sadistic element to us. You just talked about it. You're owning it. You kind of laugh about it, but you want to be sadistic. You want to hurt somebody that's hurt you, right? See, that's sadistic, right?
Okay.
That's sadistic behavior. So he goes, the punishing element is set up in the other spontaneously and unavoidably. Because, see, this emotional dependency we have, we believe the other person is going to be the solution to our lack of individuation. When they fail, we hate them for it. That's not a conscious process. That's what he says. This is the punishing element is set up in the other spontaneously. The spontaneity comes from, I'm looking for you to make me whole. You didn't do that. You're just like my fucking mother, you know, you narcissistic bitch. You're just like all of them, right? See, that's all unconscious. That's not what a person is understanding consciously. That's why he says it's being set up spontaneously and unavoidably. It's unavoidable because until I work through those unresolved issues, I have my childhood wounds, the impact, the injuries to my self-esteem that happen with a narcissistic parent. And I mean more of the diagnostic side, because every parent's going to be narcissistic to a certain way because of our culture. Our culture is a narcissistic culture. Yes. Every one of us has narcissism. I have not met anybody who does. That's why we take things so personally. It's all about us. That's narcissism. If I'm making everything about me all the time, that's narcissistic behavior. So when he says this, and look, this is back in the 30s, he saw this. In every more intimate relation, the punishing element is set up in the other spontaneously and unavoidably. And this is what makes relationships, as a rule, so hard to understand and often impossible to bear. So the question becomes, and this is how this author put it, why do two people who once dreamed their dreams together become more intent on killing each other's dreams and hopes and aspirations than helping them realize it? Otto Rank answers that question for us, because if you don't work through these issues, you're going to get disappointed. When you become disappointed, you're going to look at who's to blame for that. And if I'm projecting onto you that you're going to make me whole, guess what? How dare you not be what I thought you promised to be when we got together, because you were so wonderful. You were so understanding. You just sat and talked with me. You see what I mean? And that's how we set this up. This is not a critique on we should never get in a relationship. I'm just thinking we just need to be more realistic about it all. Yeah. And that's why you'll hear Herb and I say, Ruthie, that trouble doesn't mean something's wrong. Yeah, it's not good what's going on. It's you got hurt, they're getting hurt, you're hurting. But that trouble just shows that there's some work that needs to be done. Yeah. You're not a bad person. They're not a bad person. This stuff is just being acted out, and we got to figure it out, not get reactive to it. See, when we become reactive, we lose the ability to act upon the situation from a mature, thoughtful place. This is why we advocate so strongly living in the pause. Yeah. When you get to that gap, in that gap, you've got enough space to try to, however slight it might be, influence things in a more positive way.
The gap he's talking about is the gap between the stimulus and the response. Yeah. The action of other people and our reaction to that. It's the pause that is the magic.
So look, if we got together and you and I met and say, hey, let's have a relationship, and within about 6 months we're going to hate each other and try to kill each other's dreams. Do you want to marry me? I mean, nobody's going to do that. So we got to put up this facade and create a fantasy that we're going to have this, but in reality we got to work it out. That's the bottom. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot to work out.
As you were saying, in terms of the sadism, and I hadn't seen it in that kind of a context before, but it's our response to disappointment. It's our punishment to them for not living up to at least our fantasy of their commitment.
Yes, exactly. And listen, if you put it in writing, nobody would ever commit to all of the things that we're expecting. That's why we're never clear.
Yeah, right.
And because also we're not conscious of this going in. Yeah. You see so much of this process, and Herb has been great at helping me, because when I talk about these things, sometimes it sounds like I think everybody's just knowing this, and we're not knowing it. We know it at some level, but we don't know we know it. Let's put it that way. That's we just don't know we know it until we know it.
That's right. That's right. And that's not, that's not twisted language. That's an explanation for a process of becoming awake.
And that is the awakening process, is becoming aware of these things. And the other thing is, I hope everybody could start to listen to this. And I'm, I want to say it now, because as you continue this work, pay attention when you're doing the writing that Herb's asking you to do, is to be present to the writing, not criticizing what you're doing. So many people have come in today and said, I'm not so sure I did this right. Oh, I don't think this is. Now, wait a minute. Yeah. That's not what this is. Herb's not your teacher. He's not going to give you an A or a B on this thing. You're not writing this to live up to some expectation or standard.
Right.
You're writing this to give yourself a chance to discover something about yourself.
That's it.
If you sit here and judge yourself, you're now becoming aware of one of the big issues in your life.
Yeah.
Is that self-judgment and self-criticism is what keeps you from stuck and from moving forward. Yeah. You can't do that. You cannot do this work and then critique yourself every part of the thing. If you trust Herb and I, you do it, we'll give you the feedback. Yeah. Quit giving yourself the feedback, because you're not a good person to consult, because you're fucked up.
Yeah.
We might be fucked up, but we at least can see how you're fucked up in a different way than we can see how we're fucked up. Right. So that's what I mean. When we consult ourselves as a judge, what are we doing? We don't know, else we wouldn't be doing this stuff.
Yeah, that's why I really stress that it's not about getting it right.
No,
it's not a test. It's a prompter for an experience.
Yes.
And quite frankly, the people who have shared today, right from the beginning, have tremendous courage to experiment publicly with attempting to have a new experience.
That's right. Exactly.
So, Alan, do you have some comments?
Oh, no, my big comment is to really encourage you as you do this work, try not to be a spectator.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Try to just be present. Just be present. Trust that your facilitator, her, me, your sponsor, somebody else, they'll point the things out that need to be pointed out. That's not your job in the process. Yeah. Your job is to be as present, as accessible as you can be to what your experience is, as authentic as you can be about it. So we talk about in inner directed work, in this inner seeking, that there's two components to it. We call it accessibility and expressibility. Mm-hmm. Accessibility is my willingness to let myself be moved by what Herb is giving me a chance to do. So the writing he's doing allows me to write things down that are going to impact me and bring up certain feelings and create certain awareness. Mm-hmm. My job in that arrangement with Herb is to allow myself to be moved that way. You can't do that if you're spectatoring, right? If you're totally present to it, then you will be able to experience everything you need to. The second part of the job, as you see then, is to share what you did. Now, notice how Herb had to many times to just read to me what you wrote, because every person wants to come in and now put a narrative on it. And see, it's the same process. See, now your job is to find The words you wrote, let them express what was going on. If more needs to be done, you felt it. Herb comes in and says, wait a minute. That's how he's, by the way, you know, when you're going to get some feedback, he goes, wait a minute. That's his lead into it, right? So you know you're going to get some feedback when he's doing the wait a minute to you, that he's going to try to make you aware of something. Judy caught it. He goes, oh God, he's going to call me on being a victim. I knew it was coming. Judy knew once he started to wait a minute and stuff. Yep, you're going to, and Susie did the same thing. Oh yeah, you're going to call me on that. I knew you're going to call me on that. So that don't do both jobs. You're not good at our job. We've taken a lot of years to develop these abilities. Do your job. We'll do our job. Stay on your side of the street. We'll stay on our side of the street. We'll do as best we can with you. Trust us. I care. I know Herb cares. The one thing I know about you is what a loving soul you are, Herb. I mean, I know that to the bottom of my heart today, without any question. And I'm honored to be here with you today.
Well,
and share this.
It's always an honor, but it's also fun for us.
It's a lot of fun.
Dynamic duo, you know, and I don't know what other people are experiencing, but you and I, we really enjoy it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So
we'll have a good talk about today's workshop because it was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. One of the benefits, and we started with it, please, I'm going to make comment on what Dr. Berger's comments were. Remember the attitude I suggested was that set aside. Read Appendix 2, that spiritual awakening, spiritual experience. At the very end, he quotes Herbert Spencer, and it talks about honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. You know, we turned it into an acronym, HOW. That's how we make progress. Honesty, to the best of our ability. I'm more honest today than I was even last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Open-mindedness. And I didn't hear that literally and translated into a mechanical process until I was 10 years sober. And the man converted it into words, the set-aside attitude and the set-aside prayer, which is on page 58 in the big book. He says something about as long as we hold on to our old ideas, all right, we're condemned to not have any new ones. So it's and it's a prayer, set aside prayer, because even though I'm willing to have an open mind, I'm willing to have an open heart, I can't do that because I'm invested in my knowledge. I'm invested in my experience. I don't even know that I'm invested in how much I am invested. So I'm asking for spiritual intervention, or Dr. Berger phrases it wonderfully. We don't have to even think spiritual. Let the best in us deal with the worst in us. That's such a powerful phrase because it just really puts it in me and on me. The set aside attitude, 100%. And then that this is an experience. And he talked about participation. You participated by being here. All of you. Wonderful. Just by being here, you've absorbed something, whether you know it or not. But when you do the writing, whether you share it or not, when you do the writing, you share it some more with yourself. You participate more. You have a potential for an experience yourself. And then when you share it here publicly, and you either get clarification and or you get confirmation, then you and other people who are watching it, listening to it, have a different experience. So his comment about participating has many, many, many different levels. Show up at the very least. Reveal yourself as a participant at the very most. And to the extent that you participate, you will have new experiences. Whether you are aware of them now or not, they're like seeds that get planted. And it might not sprout for weeks or months, but you will be aware that something has happened because you actually even just showed up and listened. Alan, would you like to make any comments?
No, that's a great summary.
Yeah. Thank you. And so we began with the serenity prayer. We've talked about serenity. We've talked about emotional sobriety. We've talked about wisdom. That's the path. That's the path for freedom at the very, very biggest promise, freedom. And out of that comes happiness. Please join me in that serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, everybody.